Chapter 135. Leng Shiqi flipped through all kinds of books and scrolls in his study for an entire night. Due to his strong spiritual power, he had a photographic memory. Therefore, he could read 10 lines at a glance. He only stopped when Ajin brought him breakfast the next morning. Leng Shiqi stretched his back. Even though his body was not weak, sitting here for an entire night made him feel sore all over. After an entire night of cramming, he finally had a basic understanding of this world. This world was a world where spirit cultivators were prevalent. The spirit cultivator lineage had been passed down for over 100,000 years, and the spirit cultivation system was almost perfect. The continent he was in was called the Falling Star Continent. The continent was vast and boundless, and there were many dynasties and spirit cultivator sections. It could be said that it was a place where heroes existed side by side. There was a world sect ranking in the continent, which listed the strongest forces in the Falling Star Continent. They were 3 great dynasties, 4 Saint Spirit regions, 5 extreme sects, 6 Path Demonic regions, 7 Absolutes under Heaven, 8 Desolate Weapon Path, 9 Great Gangs, and 10 Fang aristocratic families. The Blood Cloak Pavilion was one of the top forces in the 7 Absolutes under Heaven for their assassination techniques. The assassins of the Blood Cloak Pavilion might not be very strong in a head-on battle, but their extremely mysterious assassination techniques made people tremble in fear. Especially the 9 Netherworld Blood Cloak assassins under their command. Each of them was a famous expert who had assassinated one expert after another, causing people's expressions to change when they talked about them. The Blood Cloak Pavilion was located in one of the 3 great dynasties, Muchen County, one of the 36 counties of the Thunderfire Dynasty. The Thunderfire Dynasty ruled over 36 counties. According to Leng Shiqi's understanding, the area of the Thunderfire Dynasty alone was comparable to the country of Huaxia in his previous life. However, there were many spirit cultivator sects in the 36 counties, especially those first-rate and peak forces. They could be said to have occupied a mountain and called themselves kings. They did not put the people of the dynasty in their eyes at all. For example, the Blood Cloak Pavilion. In Muchen County, the Blood Cloak Pavilion's power far surpassed the Thunderfire Dynasty. Sometimes, the words of the Blood Cloak Pavilion were even more effective than the Imperial Edict of the dynasty. Other than that, Leng Shiqi also learned about some rare beasts, heavenly treasures, myths and legends, as well as the distribution of the spirit cultivator sects in the Thunderblaze dynasty. Leng Shiqi finished his simple breakfast and couldn't help but smack his lips a few times. It had been almost 2 years since he had eaten real food. Then, he entered the cultivation room and sat down cross-legged, closing his eyes to rest. Although it had only been a little more than a day since he entered the blood-colored tower, he had experienced a lot of things and received a lot of information. He really needed to rest. For hours later, when it was close to noon, Leng Shiqi walked out of the cultivation room. He took a light step forward. His body looked a little slow, but in the blink of an eye, he was already in front of the door. This was a rank 3 movement technique, floating spirit steps. Great perfection stage floating spirit steps. Leng Shiqi pushed open the door and saw that the small courtyard today was clearly much more orderly than yesterday. Moreover, there were more colorful flowers and plants in the surroundings. Not only were they pleasing to the eye, but they also had a fragrance that made people feel relaxed and happy. Zhe and Ajin, who were taking care of the small courtyard, saw Leng Shiqi come out and bowed. "Greetings, Lord." Leng Shiqi nodded casually and the two went back to their own business. Not long after, Suwan arrived as promised. Without saying a word, she brought Leng Shiqi to the back mountain of Formless Palace. There was a large and beautiful flower garden here. The two walked to the center of the garden before stopping. In the center was an open space with a radius of several tens of feet. The ground was paved with bluestone and there were some deep grooves carved into it. Leng Shiqi didn't know why Suwan brought him here. It couldn't be that she was here to enjoy the scenery, right? Sure enough, Suwan lightly clapped her hands and the bluestone under her feet slowly moved, revealing a dark underground cave. Unexpectedly, a person with disheveled hair and messy clothes walked out. Leng Shiqi saw no less than several dozen wounds on his body, but that person's eyes were staring at him like a hungry wolf. His cultivation seemed to be at the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm. Suwan said, "Lang Chi, kill him and you can live. Moreover, you can take his place as the assassin in black." Lang Chi's eyes faintly glowed with a green light. In the next instant, his hands turned into claws and grabbed at Leng Shichi. Leng Shichi didn't expect Suwan to do this, but he didn't panic. He skillfully used his confusion footwork and took a step forward. However, Leng Shichi underestimated Lone Wolf's speed. Lone Wolf suddenly sped up when he was halfway there. Even though Leng Shichi used his confusion footwork, his clothes were still torn apart. Hiss! Leng Shichi was startled. He raised his index and middle fingers and two invisible sword chi shot out. He didn't have a sword in his hand, so he used his fingers as a sword. Two rays of unblocking meridian sword chi shot out silently, but Lang Chi also sensed it. He twisted his body at an extremely strange angle and barely dodged one of them. However, one of the rays of unblocking meridian sword chi pierced his skin and entered his back. The sword chi entered his body and sealed off two of his meridians. Even so, Lang Chi's expression didn't change. Wisps of black smoke came out of his index finger and he stabbed out. At this moment, a layer of black smoke appeared under Leng Shichi's feet. His speed was clearly faster than before. At the same time, his hands turned into pitch-black ghost claws. His right index finger continuously emitted spiritual energy as he pointed forward. When this finger was pointed out, it vaguely contained the power to move mountains. This was a rank 2 spiritual skill, Mountain Crushing Finger. The Mountain Destroyer finger collided with Lang Chi's fingertip. The spirit light from the spirit finger easily destroyed Lang Chi's black silk and directly pierced a bloody hole in his palm. However, Leng Shichi felt that something was wrong. Sure enough, in the next moment, Lang Chi reached out and grabbed Leng Shichi's wrist. At the same time, he pulled out a dagger from his waist and fiercely stabbed forward. Not only that, but the black smoke that was destroyed by Leng Shichi was now attached to the dagger. Leng Shichi didn't panic in the face of danger. He raised his leg and suddenly kicked out 10 times like the wind. Each kick accurately hit Lang Chi's waist and sent him flying. Rank 2 spiritual skill, Wind Catching Kick. Seeing that Lang Chi was sent flying, Leng Shichi didn't want to let him go. He slightly moved his body and activated the floating steps. His movement seemed slow, but was actually very fast. Before Lang Chi could react, Leng Shichi sent out 6 more palm strikes, each of which carried a blazing aura. Rank 2 spiritual skill, 6 Yang Palms. Lang Chi felt the blazing aura around him and twisted his body again. He dodged most of the palms, but 2 of them still landed on his body. He let out a muffled groan. The dagger in his hand flew out and the black smoke quickly formed a black net. However, Leng Shichi lowered his body and a gray cloud appeared around him. The black net instantly shattered the gray cloud, but Leng Shichi was nowhere to be seen. Lang Chi immediately felt that something was wrong. He hurriedly turned around, but a dagger had already pierced his heart. Rank 2 spiritual skill, Mysterious Cloud Thrust. Perhaps Su Wan wanted to use Lang Chi to test Leng Shichi's strength, but Leng Shichi used him as a tool to hone his spiritual skills. With Leng Shichi's peak spiritual skills, he was currently invincible among those of the same rank. Furthermore, he was only using spiritual skills that he rarely used and was hiding his true strength. After Lang Chi fell to the ground, the blue stone tiles on the ground began to move again. A black mouth appeared and swallowed Lang Chi's corpse. Immediately after, a series of cracking sounds came from the ground. Not long after, a stream of blood flowed out and flowed along the grooves on the ground. Leng Shichi looked at the flowers and felt that they were even more beautiful. Chapter 136. Clap, clap, clap. Su Wan lightly clapped her hands and said, "To be able to catch Master's attention, Junior Leng is truly extraordinary." Now, Su Wan finally called him Junior Brother. Leng Shichi knew that Su Wan recognized his strength and said, "Senior Sister Su Wan is too kind." In reality, Leng Shichi was a bit glad that he chose the rank 3 movement skill floating steps yesterday. Otherwise, It would have taken a lot of effort to defeat Lang Qi with just the confusing steps. Take this cultivation technique and cultivate it. If there's anything you don't understand, you can come find me in Qing Wan Courtyard. Su Wan handed over an exquisite secret manual and turned to leave, leaving him here. Leng Shiqi didn't mind. He lowered his head and saw the words "Blood Slaughter 7 Fiendish Arts" written on the manual. Seeing these words, Leng Shiqi trembled. He knew that this was the core cultivation technique of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Only Blood Cloak assassins had the qualifications to cultivate this rank 7 cultivation technique. Currently, Leng Shiqi's most powerful cultivation technique, Demonic Beast Technique, was only at rank 3, but Su Wan directly gave him a rank 7 cultivation technique. This made Leng Shiqi both surprised and happy. But after he opened the secret manual and glanced at it, he realized that the Blood Slaughter 7 Fiendish Arts in his hand only had the first 3 layers. But even with only 3 layers, it was comparable to a rank 4 cultivation technique. It was enough for him to cultivate to the Spirit Aperture realm. After returning to his courtyard, Leng Shiqi locked himself in a cultivation room to study the Blood Slaughter 7 Fiendish Arts. First of all, this cultivation technique had 7 layers. It was said that the 7th layer was the core of this cultivation technique. And this Blood Slaughter 7 Fiendish Arts had 2 characteristics. One was that it could greatly mobilize the body's blood and qi, allowing it to erupt with great power for a short period of time. But this would naturally cause a loss of blood and qi. Leng Shiqi muttered to himself, "This is a bit similar to the blood explosion pill I swallowed before." The other characteristic of this cultivation technique was that it could control the body's killing intent for its own use. Baleful qi was an invisible substance that was naturally formed after killing too many people. It was hidden in the body of a person. If there wasn't much killing intent, it wouldn't have much effect. But some people's killing intent had become second nature and condensed a large amount of killing intent. In the end, they could even be devoured by the killing intent and become a blind killing madman. Then, in the end, he could only be eradicated by the various spirit cultivator sects, and at the same time, he could also gain a wave of reputation. On the other hand, the Blood Cloak Pavilion was the strongest assassin sect in the Thunderblaze dynasty, perhaps even the entire continent. Every single one of its disciples was covered in blood, so they definitely possessed a lot of baleful aura. The Blood Cloak assassins, the Blood Slaughter 7 Fiendish Arts to use killing intent. Ants Blood's killing blood, S the Blood's blood, S Chi. Leng Shiqi pondered for a moment. He had killed quite a number of people and demonic beasts on the Blood Fog Island. Therefore, he reckoned that he should also have some killing intent. Unfortunately, these 2 characteristics could only be fully displayed at the Spirit Pulse realm. Leng Shiqi then used the system to directly cultivate the Blood Slaughter 7 Fiendish Arts and then changed it to his main cultivation technique. A day later, Leng Shiqi let out a mouthful of turbid air. At this moment, his cultivation had reached the limit of the 5th level of the Spirit Transformation realm. He could break through the bottleneck of the 6th level at any time, but he was not in a hurry to break through. He then walked out of the cultivation room to find something to eat. Unexpectedly, there was a slightly fat person sitting in the living room. Disciple greets Master. Disciple didn't welcome Master. Leng Shiqi quickly bowed. The person who came was Leng Shiqi's chief master, Wu Xiang. Wu Xiang said indifferently, "It's fine. Master just arrived and knew you were at a critical moment in your cultivation, so I didn't call you. Many thanks for Master's understanding. Oh, your senior sister came to find me yesterday. She has a very high opinion of you and directly gave you the Blood Slaughter 7 Fiendish Arts. However, this cultivation method is very difficult to learn. I was afraid you wouldn't understand, so I came to take a look. I didn't expect you to be able to use it so freely. You are worthy of being one of the winners of the Blood Fog Island competition." Leng Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. Wu Xiang had come yesterday. Didn't that mean he had made his master wait here for a day and a night? However, from Wu Xiang's tone, he didn't seem to blame him. Instead, he seemed to admire him. At this point, Leng Shiqi's impression of Wu Xiang had changed a bit. He wanted to say a few more words of praise, but Wu Xiang continued, "Master came here for another matter. Please tell me, Master. Yes, I've been thinking about it for the past 2 days. I've decided to send you to the next pavilion to gain some experience. Wu Xiang turned to look at Leng Shiqi, as if to see his reaction. Pavilion? Leng Shiqi knew that although the Blood Cloak Pavilion had the title of the strongest assassin force, not to mention the entire continent, just the Thunderblaze dynasty was vast. The Blood Cloak Pavilion headquarters naturally couldn't cover such a large area, so the Blood Cloak Pavilion had branches in some counties. However, the resources and treatment of the branches were naturally not as abundant as the main pavilion, so many disciples of the branches were fighting to get into the main pavilion, but he was going to be sent to a branch. Wasn't this equivalent to being sent away? However, Leng Shiqi didn't feel anything special. Instead, he felt that it was beneficial to him. Although he had only stayed in the main pavilion for 2 days, he always felt a sense of restraint. Moreover, he was carrying a lot of secrets. If he stayed for too long, he might be discovered by those big shots. If he was sent to a branch, he would be able to stretch his hands and feet. Therefore, his mentality and expression were very natural as he said, "I'll follow Master's orders." All of this fell into Wu Xiang's eyes. He saw that Leng Shiqi was calm and didn't seem to have any grudges in his heart, so his evaluation of him increased by 2 points. Therefore he said, "Very good. Then you can pack up. Tomorrow, I will send someone to send you to the Donglin County branch. Remember, Master also has requirements for you. You must break through to the 4 realms of celestial being and be promoted to a Blood Cloak assassin within a year. If you can do it, Master will give you a great opportunity. If you can't do it, you can be a little assassin for the rest of your life." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi thought to himself, he really has other intentions for this arrangement. However, it is somewhat difficult to break through to the spiritual pulse realm of the 4 realms of celestial being within a year. Moreover, it seems that the promotion of a Blood Cloak assassin requires not only the cultivation of the spiritual pulse realm, but also a lot of sect contributions. This mission seems to be not dangerous, but it is actually very difficult. However, Leng Shiqi still said solemnly, "Disciple understands. Master is very satisfied with your temperament. This is Master's gift for you to become my disciple. Let's meet again in a year." Wu Xiang threw a small bag the size of a palm and left. Leng Shiqi picked up the small bag and looked slightly surprised. Chapter 137. Donglin County was located in the easternmost part of the Thunderfire dynasty. It was one of the counties near the sea. Because this county was located in the coastal area, it established trade with many overseas spirit cultivator forces. It could obtain a huge amount of precious resources that could not be produced on the mainland. Therefore, Donglin County could be said to be abnormally prosperous. However, more than half of this prosperity was controlled by the major forces in Donglin County. On the contrary, the Thunderfire dynasty did not gain much. This was because there was a top force in Donglin County, the Mountain Sea Sect. The Mountain Sea Sect, one of the 9 great sects in the world. The Mountain Sea Sect had a deep relationship with overseas spirit cultivators. They controlled almost half of the overseas trade routes. Not only were they strong, but they were also rich. With this local snake, even the strong Thunderfire dynasty could not reach in. Therefore, the deterrence of the Thunderfire dynasty in Donglin County was far inferior to that of the Mountain Sea Sect. This was also the place where the dynasty and the spirit cultivator sects formed. Near a small remote city in Donglin County, there was a small mountain called the Wind Ridge. Because passers-by often heard the faint sound of ghostly cries coming from inside, and there were even rumors that there were evil spirits here. Gradually, this place became desolate. Moreover, this small mountain did not have a spirit vein, and the spirit energy was very thin. No spirit cultivator would come here, so the Wind Ridge became a deserted place. However, today, 2 men in black, one tall and one short, came here. The tall man was a young man in his 20s. At this time, he said, "Junior Brother Leng, this is the Donglin County branch. Senior Brother Fan, there are few people here. It is indeed a good place." The short youth added, These two people were Lung Shiqi and Fan Jingchu, who had rushed over from the Blood Clothing Pavilion's main pavilion. Fan Jingchu was originally a disciple of the Donglin County branch. This time, he went to the main pavilion to run errands, but was directly captured by Wu Xiang to lead the way for Lung Shiqi. It had been 7 or 8 days since the two of them set off from the main pavilion. They had been riding on spirit horses all the way until they finally arrived here. Originally, Lung Shiqi had planned to see the local customs of this world, but in the end he only ate a nose full of dust. Fan Jingchu continued, "There is a maze here. Junior brother Lung, you must follow me closely later." Lung Shiqi nodded. Understood. After that, Lung Shiqi followed Fan Jingchu through many twists and turns, and after 2 incense sticks worth of time, they entered a huge space. Lung Shiqi looked around and was shocked to find that he was inside the mountain. In other words, the Blood Garment Pavilion had hollowed out this small mountain. The entire space was oval-shaped and had 3 floors from bottom to top. Each floor had many rooms and halls. There were many people coming and going, but most of them were assassins in black. They also saw Lung Shiqi and Fan Jingchu, but most of them just glanced at them and didn't pay much attention. Some of the more observant people looked at the small pouch on his waist. Fan Jingchu said, "Let's go. I'll take you to the Grand Pavilion leader first." Gui Ju, the Grand Pavilion leader of the Blood Garment Pavilion branch in Donglin County, was an old man more than 100 years old. He was once a master in the realm of oneness of heaven and men. It was said that decades ago, Gui Ju was also one of the 9 nether Blood Garment assassins of the Blood Garment Pavilion. But later, he was seriously injured in a mission and fell to the realm of Gang Spirit Realm. Since then, he took the initiative to leave the General Pavilion and came to Donglin County to take care of the branch. "Greetings, Grand Pavilion Leader." Lung Shiqi and Fan Jingchu saluted together. Gui Ju raised his arm and a gentle force helped the two of them up. His voice was very soft but clearly entered their ears. "Fan Jingchu, you've worked hard this time. Go and get 2 more spirit transformation pills." Fan Jingchu's face lit up and he left. Seeing this, Lung Shiqi knew that Gui Ju must have something to say to him. Gui Ju's eyes stayed on Lung Shiqi for a long time, which made his back numb. After a while, he said, "Wu Xiang has told me your identity." Lung Shiqi was shocked. He remembered that Wu Xiang had said that his identity was top secret and could not be disclosed to anyone. Why did Wu Xiang tell others? Don't be surprised. I participated in the opening of the secret realm of the Blood Mist Island. Gui Ju's words left a thunder in Lung Shiqi's heart again. He continued, "This is the reason why Wu Xiang sent you to me. Only those who know your secret will protect it. But I won't take care of you. From tomorrow on, you'll take tasks and get used to the pace of the Blood Garment Pavilion as soon as possible." "I understand. I've arranged a room for you. Go and have a rest. I'll take my leave." Lung Shiqi put away all his thoughts and left. Returning to his own stone room, Lung Shiqi first took a look around. The stone room wasn't big, but it had everything that he needed. Unfortunately, there was no cultivation room like the main pavilion, so the spirit energy was much weaker. However, he did not complain. Instead, he sat cross-legged and touched the small bag at his waist with his right hand. Then, a few dry rations and a bag of water suddenly appeared in his hand. After all, these things were not taken out from the system space, but from the small bag. The small bag was given to him by Wu Xiang before he left. It was a mustard seed bag. This mustard seed bag had a space the size of a small house, and there were some things stored inside. For example, spirit stones, pills, daily necessities, and even some gold and silver. However, the value of these things added together was not as valuable as the mustard seed bag. From what he knew, the mustard seed bag could be said to be a priceless treasure. Only people with high status were qualified to have it. Lung Shiqi liked the mustard seed bag very much. This way, some ordinary things could be stored in it. The truly important things were stored in the system space. However, he did not dare to use the mustard seed bag in front of others. He still understood the principle that a man's wealth was his own ruin. Although his cultivation and strength were considered top-notch among his peers, in this world, he was still a weakling who had not reached the celestial realm. The next day, Leng Shiqi came to the central square. This was the place to accept missions, and it was also a place with a lot of people. There were several large boards erected in the middle of the plaza, displaying a large number of missions according to their difficulty. Leng Shiqi walked to a board in the corner. As a black-clothed assassin, he was only qualified to accept 1-star and 2-star missions. Leng Shiqi's eyes narrowed slightly as he carefully scanned the missions one by one. The targets of these missions were all below the celestial realm. Most of them were targets of the spirit transformation realm, and a few of the pure spirit realm or ordinary people were people with high status. Leng Shiqi planned to take a 2-star mission to practice, preferably one that was not far away and had high contribution points. The contribution points of the Blood Cloak Pavilion were called blood drops. Blood drops were very useful. Not only could they be used to exchange for various cultivation resources and information, but they could also be used to buy higher-level stone rooms. For example, the stone rooms on the second floor had spirit-gathering formations, and the spirit chi in them far exceeded that of ordinary stone rooms. In the future, when he was promoted to a blood-clothed assassin, he would need as many as 1,000 blood drops. In addition to some gold, silver, and spirit stones, the highest reward for a 2-star mission was about 50 to 60 blood drops. Therefore, from now on, Leng Shiqi had to start saving up some blood drops. After looking around, Leng Shiqi tore off one of the missions, which immediately attracted the attention of others. Chapter 138. The mission Leng Shiqi accepted was to assassinate Bao Pingyi, the leader of the Three Swords Gang in Shangyang City of Donglin County. The reason he accepted this mission was because it was very close. Shangyang City was a small city next to the Yin Wind Ridge and was only a few dozen kilometers away. The target was Bao Pingyi, who was at the 8th level of the spirit transformation realm. Although Leng Shiqi was only at the 5th level of the spirit transformation realm, he still had some confidence. The Three Swords Gang was not a spirit cultivation sect, but a street gang in Shangyang City. Although Bao Pingyi was the leader, he was still a rogue cultivator with no one to guide him. Whether it was cultivation methods or spirit techniques, he was far inferior to a disciple of a spirit cultivation sect. Especially someone like Leng Shiqi, who had several cultivation methods and a lot of spirit techniques at the peak of the spirit transformation realm. In terms of spirit force foundation and combat strength, he was no worse than a rogue cultivator at the 8th level of the spirit transformation realm. Moreover, the reward for this mission was good. There were all kinds of spirit stones and pills, as well as 50 blood drops, so Leng Shiqi thought this mission was very suitable for him. When he tore off the mission, he suddenly felt dozens of gazes fall on him. Leng Shiqi turned around and those people also withdrew their gazes, which made him feel a bit strange. Then he gently shook his head and prepared to do the mission. After Leng Shiqi left, the dozens of people there immediately began to whisper. "Who is this person? His figure looks very unfamiliar." "I know, he came with Fan Jingchu yesterday and went to see the head pavilion leader." "Oh? The head pavilion leader saw him? It seems that this person's identity is not simple. I think he might be from the main pavilion. So he was sent down. I'm afraid he did something wrong in the main pavilion. No wonder he accepted Bao Pingyi's mission. He's young and ignorant. This mission's reward is so good, but no one has accepted it for so long. He actually dared to accept it. It seems that he never inquired about that bastard Bao Pingyi. I'm afraid he's going to suffer. Who cares about him?" Of course, Leng Shiqi didn't know that people were talking about him behind his back. After accepting the mission and registering, he set off for Shangyang City with his spirit sword on his back and a scimitar at his waist. He ran as fast as he could and bought a horse from a small town along the way. By the time he reached Shangyang City, it was already night and the city gates were already closed. Leng Shiqi had no choice but to use Gaia Hand to sneak into the city. Unfortunately, he lost his horse not long after he bought it. After entering the city, he walked on the empty streets and picked up a map. Following the map, he arrived at a coffin shop. Dong dong dong. Leng Shiqi knocked on the door according to a strange pattern. Not long after, someone cursed from inside, "Why are you knocking in the dark? Are you in a hurry to buy yourself a coffin?" The door opened a crack, revealing a head with black and white hair and a mustache. Leng Shiqi didn't say anything. He took out his token and put it away. The person looked around and immediately led Leng Shiqi in. Mao Kai greets the black-clothed envoy. The person bowed. Leng Shiqi looked at the person. The person was short and his eyes were narrowed into slits. He looked like a money grubber. He looked to be in his 40s or 50s, but his back was hunched. He was even shorter than the 13-year-old Leng Shiqi. This person was the informant of the blood-clothed pavilion in Shangyang City. Anyone who carried out a mission near Shangyang City could ask him for some information. Of course, it was paid. When you accepted the mission, there would only be some superficial information in the mission. For example, Leng Shiqi's mission was to assassinate Bao Pingyi of the Three Swords Association. However, there was no information on how powerful the Three Swords Association was, how many guards Bao Pingyi had, or what he was good at. If Leng Shiqi wanted to successfully complete the mission, he had to collect enough information, so he found Mao Kai. He said straightforwardly, "I need information on the Three Swords Association and Bao Pingyi. Envoy, please wait a moment. I will be back soon." Mao Kai said sleepily and then turned into another room. In less than 15 minutes, Mao Kai came out with several scrolls of information. He picked up one of them and said, "This information records the general information of the small gangs in Shangyang City, including the Three Swords Association. Envoy, this is your first time here. I will give you this information with both hands." Leng Shiqi looked at Mao Kai with interest and said, "Okay, I will accept this. You can name the rest." "Haha, listen to me. This was all the information about the Three Swords Gang's leaders, including their residences, cultivation levels, cultivation methods, and spirit techniques. It only cost 1 spirit stone. This is detailed information on Bao Pingyi. It costs 2 spirit stones." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi frowned. The price of this information was beyond his imagination. He originally thought that he could buy the information with money, but he didn't expect it to cost spirit stones. If he bought these 2 scrolls of information, he would have to spend 3 spirit stones. However, as an assassin in black, his monthly salary was only 5 spirit stones. If he calculated it this way, the assassins in black would have to pay for these 2 missions. Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes and emitted cold air. This was true cold air coming from Leng Shiqi's feet. In an instant, the temperature in the room plummeted. Mao Kai couldn't help but shiver and said, "Envoy, why are you doing this?" "If you know the answer. Do you think I am young and ignorant? I think that the spy in Shangyang City can do a good job even if it was someone else," Leng Shiqi said coldly. His right hand gripped the handle of the scimitar at his waist and slowly pulled out the blade. "Envoy, please spare me. Envoy, please spare me." Mao Kai felt Leng Shiqi's killing intent and immediately knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Leng Shiqi pulled out even more of his scimitar. No. I will give all the information to you for free." "How can that be?" Leng Shiqi let go of the scimitar handle and withdrew his cold air. "You are in this business. How can I take your things for free? Just tell me how much you should sell them for. I won't give you a penny less." Mao Kai wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and said, "Envoy, just give me 300 taels of silver for these 2 scrolls of information." "Really? So cheap?" Leng Shiqi knew that in this world, a single spirit stone was worth 1,000 taels of gold. Mao Kai had asked for 3 spirit stones earlier, and now he only asked for 300 taels of silver. This was equivalent to reducing the price by 100 times. It was clear that Mao Kai was asking for too much. "I won't lie to you anymore. I'll trust you this time. I'll take these 2 scrolls of information." Leng Shiqi took out 300 taels of silver notes from his pocket. These were the notes that Wu Xiang prepared for him in his mustard seed bag. "This." Mao Kai's eyes lit up when he saw the notes. However, he glanced at Leng Shiqi from time to time and seemed to be hesitant. Leng Shiqi handed over the notes and said, "This is what you deserve. Take it." "Oh, thank you, Envoy, thank you, Envoy." Mao Kai happily took the notes. When he saw that Leng Shiqi was about to leave, he hurriedly said, "Esteemed envoy, I have another service here. I wonder if esteemed envoy is interested?" Leng Shiqi stopped and said, "Let's hear it." Envoy should be going to deal with Baopingyi. I grew up in Shangyang City and know the city like the back of my hand. This lowly one can specially design a perfect retreat plan for the esteemed envoy. But this Mao Kai said as he rubbed his thumb and index finger. His meaning was obvious. However, Leng Shiqi directly refused and pushed the door open. Mao Kai's face instantly darkened. He muttered to himself, "Where did this brat come from? Why is he acting all high and mighty? At least he was chopped to death by the people of the Three Swords Association." As he spoke, he looked at the notes in his hand and a smile appeared on his face. He can sell that piece of information for 300 taels of silver. He's still too young. Chapter 139. After leaving the coffin shop, Leng Shiqi turned into a small alley, then quietly sneaked into the ground and opened up a small space. The reason why he rejected Mao Kai's suggestion was because Mao Kai's mention of the word terrain had reminded him of something. The system map. Ever since the system upgrade unlocked the map function, he had not used it because the map was useless on Blood Fog Island. Only now did he suddenly remember this matter. Leng Shiqi opened the system map, and a circular light screen appeared in front of him. It was basically pitch black, and there was only a thin curved white line at the bottom right corner. He stretched out his hand and drew a few times, and the map was magnified several times. At this time, the white line became a route. Leng Shiqi took a closer look. Wasn't this the route he took from the General Pavilion to the Yin Wind Ridge in Donglin County, and then to Shangyang City? It also showed some of the geographical features near the route. He enlarged the map again and pulled it to Shangyang City. He saw that everywhere he went in the city, the nearby terrain was clearly displayed. This map is a little interesting. Looks like I'll have to spend more time studying it in the future, Leng Shiqi muttered to himself. Next, he picked up the few pieces of information he had obtained and carefully read them. The current Shangyang City was controlled by the City Lord's Mansion, Chinko Hall, and the Three Swords Gang. Chinko Hall and the Three Swords Gang were just small street gangs. They were not considered spirit cultivation sects at all. Even so, they had thousands of gang members. The Thunderblaze dynasty's influence in Donglin County was not strong. The City Lord's Mansion only had a few hundred city guards, and the quality of the guards was uneven. Therefore, these two gangs did not put the City Lord's Mansion in their eyes. However, the City Lord's Mansion was a power of the dynasty after all, so they did not dare to go too far. Chinko Hall and the Three Swords Gang occupied the east and west sides of the city respectively. The Three Swords Gang was able to suppress Chinko Hall because not long ago, the Three Swords Gang had climbed up to the third-rate Heavenly Cloud building. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi felt that this mission was not that simple. He originally thought that it was just to assassinate the leader of a small gang, but he did not expect it to involve a spirit cultivation sect. The difference between a spirit cultivator sect and a small gang like the Three Blades Society was like the difference between heaven and earth. Even the weakest third-rate sect was founded by a spirit aperture realm expert. However, the leader of the Three-Blade Gang, Baopingyi, was only at the late stage of the spirit transformation realm. Most of his subordinates were just hooligans. Leng Shiqi really couldn't imagine how Baopingyi could get involved with a proper spirit cultivation sect like the Heavenly Cloud Pavilion. Leng Shiqi continued to read, but the more he read, the deeper his frown became. The Three-Blade Gang had 7 leaders under Baopingyi. They were all at the spirit transformation realm and each of them guarded a street. Baopingyi, on the other hand, had always been a cautious person who cherished his life very much. He had always holed himself up in his own mansion and rarely went out. He still had over 100 guards in his mansion, all of them spirit cultivators. Every day they would take turns to patrol, and it could be said that not even a fly could enter. In addition, no matter where Baopingyi went, there would be 4 spirit transformation realm guards protecting him. They were called the 4 spirit guards, and they would even accompany Baopingyi when he was eating or sleeping. These 4 spirit transformation realm cultivators were specially sent by the Heavenly Cloud Pavilion to protect Baopingyi. What is so special about this Baopingyi that the Heavenly Cloud Pavilion would send 4 spirit transformation realm cultivators to protect him? Leng Shiqi felt that this mission was a bit tricky. Ignoring the guards, Baopingyi was too cautious, and there was no way to assassinate him. Even if he used the Hand of the Earth to quietly approach Baopingyi, he would still have to face the 4 spirit transformation realm cultivators. Once a fight broke out, it would definitely attract more guards. Leng Shiqi didn't think that he had the strength to take the head of an enemy general from an army of 10,000. AI, while it's dark, I should go check out the area around the Bao Mansion. Then, he moved towards the location indicated in the intelligence report. Not long after, Leng Shiqi arrived near the Bao Mansion. Immediately, the veins in his eyes bulged and his eyes turned green. Byakugan open. As soon as the Byakugan opened, the world in Leng Shiqi's eyes turned gray. Everyone in the Bao Mansion was within his sight. The Byakugan was an eye technique with extremely strong detection abilities. It was very suitable for Leng Shiqi's identity as an assassin. In Leng Shiqi's eyes, he quickly found 5 huge sources of spirit energy. They must be Baopingyi and his 4 guards. Just as the intelligence report said, these 5 people were indeed standing closely together. Moreover, there were hundreds of spirit cultivators walking back and forth in the Bao Mansion. There were almost no blind spots. It would be difficult for an ordinary assassin to even enter the Bao Mansion. Then, Leng Shiqi used the breath concealing technique to restrain his aura. His body sank into the ground. Not long after, he arrived at the bottom of the room where Baopingyi was, waiting for an opportunity. However, after waiting for a while, the 5 people above didn't move at all. Just as Leng Shiqi was hesitating whether or not he should try to assassinate Baopingyi first. In his eyes, suddenly, 2 auras that were not weaker than his quickly walked over. Then, the sound of conversation came from above. Leng Shiqi quickly suppressed the killing intent in his heart and listened carefully. President. Big brother. 4th brother. 7th brother, why are you looking for me? Baopingyi's voice sounded a little old. President, the people of Chinko Hall have been too much these days. Yes, especially the 2 streets where 4th brother and I are. They have been looking for trouble. Today they even smashed my place. You can't even handle such a small matter? Baopingyi's tone seemed a little unhappy. President, don't worry. Little 7 doesn't dare to disturb President. It's just that I feel that the City Lord's mansion is about to lose control of Jinshi Street. Our chance has come. Oh? Jinshi Street is one of the most prosperous streets in Shangyang City. Chu Xen Ran is willing to give it up? Hee, that City Lord Chu has just arrived. He hasn't even suppressed the city guards under him. How can he have the time to manage Jinshi Street? President, while the people of Chinko Hall haven't noticed, let's make the first move. At this moment, Baopingyi was silent for a while before saying, First, tell the brothers to be ready to make a move. However, we can't be anxious. After all, the City Lord's mansion still represents the Thunderblaze dynasty. We can't fall out in front of them. He paused for a moment before saying, Secretly leak this information to Chinko Hall. President? President is wise. President wants Chinko Hall to make the first move. Our 3 Swords Association is helping the City Lord's mansion eliminate evil. Go, I'll leave this matter to the 2 of you. The 2 of them happily agreed. Since this task had fallen on their shoulders, it meant that they could share the profits of Jinshi Street. After hearing all this, Leng Shiqi silently left the Bao residence. He already had a plan to lure Baopingyi out of the Bao residence. Chapter 140. At night 2 days later, all the stores on Jinshi Street had already been tightly closed. It wasn't that they didn't want to do business, but there were hundreds of people from the Chinko Hall and the 3 Swords gang gathered on Jinshi Street. Both sides were rubbing their fists. The smell of gunpowder was very strong, as if they could fight at any time. The leaders of the 3 Swords gang were Baopingyi's 2 subordinates, Nyekuan and Ningqi. They were both at the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm. The Chinko Hall was not to be outdone. They also had two leaders at the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm, Tian Hu and Ringan. At this moment, the four of them were talking bad about each other in front of others. Tian Hu of the Chinko Hall was a burly man. He had the most violent temper. Under Nyekuan's provocation, he couldn't bear it anymore. He raised the big axe in his hand and chopped down. Tian Hu's attack was like a signal. Everyone began to attack at this moment. Ringan wanted to pull him back, but he didn't have time. He could only draw his short sword and face the seventh leader, Ningqi. A great battle for control of Jinshi Street began. Both sides had accumulated grievances for a long time. Once they started fighting, they instantly became angry and bloodthirsty. Every moment, there were people falling to the ground. However, they knew that the most important part of this battle was the battle between the leaders of both sides. Tian Hu brandished his heavy axe, opening and closing with ferocious might, continuously forcing Nyekuan to retreat. Nyekuan held his long sword. Although he was being pushed back step by step, his expression was calm. On the other side, Ningqi and Ringan were also evenly matched. It was a protracted battle between them. It was difficult to determine the winner in a short period of time. Just as the Chinko Hall and the Three Swords gang were fighting, two figures stood on the roof in the distance. One of them was a middle-aged man around 30 years old. He had a square appearance, wore brocade clothes, and had an extraordinary bearing. He didn't look like an ordinary person. Beside him stood a short and slightly stooped person. That person was covered in a black robe and his face couldn't be seen clearly. The middle-aged man said indifferently, "Old Mr. Liu, who do you think will win among the four?" "Gaga, that depends on who City Lord Chu wants to win." The old man's voice was abnormally hoarse and even had a hint of ear-piercing feeling, making people feel uncomfortable. The middle-aged man was the newly appointed city lord of Shangyang City, Chu Xinran. As for the old man surnamed Liu, he was naturally Leng Shiqi in disguise. Back to 2 days ago. After leaving Bao Pingyi's mansion, Leng Shiqi planned to find a way to lure him out. However, Bao Pingyi had always been extremely cautious. If they wanted to lure him out, they would have to do something big for him. Coincidentally, he heard that the Three Swords Association seemed to have the intention to fight for Jinshi Street, so he thought of a plan. And the most important part of this plan was the city lord of Shangyang City, Chu Xinran. On the surface, this matter didn't seem to have much to do with City Lord Chu, but in fact, it wasn't. Mao Kai's information also mentioned that this Jinshi Street was one of the few bustling streets in the city lord's mansion. How could Chu Xinran have the thought of giving up so easily? Leng Shiqi vaguely felt that there was more to this than met the eye. For example, the news that Chinko Hall obtained was purposely released by the Three Swords Association. Then, could the news that the Three Swords Association obtained be purposely released by the city lord's mansion? At that time, the more Leng Shiqi thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. However, Leng Shiqi didn't understand what City Lord Chu wanted to do. However, he knew one thing, and that was that Chu Xinran would definitely make a move against these two gangs. Of course, he couldn't destroy these two gangs all at once, but he could weaken their power to gain a foothold. If that's the case, I might as well help you, Leng Shiqi thought to himself. Thus, he disguised himself. Because he was still young and not very tall, he could only disguise himself as an old man. He smeared paint on his arms and neck and used a voice-changing technique to imitate an old man's voice. Then, he snuck into the city lord's mansion. In the city lord's mansion, there were only a few sleepy city guards standing guard. In terms of defense, it was much worse than the Three Swords Association. On the other hand, Chu Xinran was still burning the midnight oil, dealing with various matters. Suddenly, the lights on the walls and the desk in the room flickered, as if they would go out at any moment. Chu Xinran's expression changed. He slowly put down his hand that was holding the brush and said without changing his expression, "Who are you? I would like to meet you." The short old man that Leng Shiqi disguised as walked out from behind the curtain and said with a sharp voice, "Hee, City Lord Chu, you flatter me. I'm just a lonely ghost, I don't deserve to be called an expert." Chu Xinran saw that someone had entered his room without him noticing. He couldn't help but be shocked, but his face remained calm. "Excuse me for not going out to meet you. May I know Senior's name?" "This old man's surname is Lu. So it's Senior Lu." Leng Shiqi didn't want to talk too much with Chu Xinran because he had experienced too little in this world. Now that he was disguised as an old man, he was afraid that the more he said, the more mistakes he would make. Thus, he directly said, "This old man has disturbed City Lord Chu this time because of Jinshi Street." When Chu Xinran heard the words Jinshi Street, a glint of light flashed across his eyes. But before he could speak, Leng Shiqi continued. "City Lord Chu doesn't need to say more. Now the City Lord's mansion in Shangyang City is being suppressed by 2 gangs. If it were me, I wouldn't be willing to accept this. Jinshi Street is indeed a piece of fat meat that causes 2 tigers to fight. But this piece of fat meat is not enough to hurt the 2 tigers. So this old man can help City Lord and let these 2 tigers really fight to the death. At that time, City Lord Chu can sit back and reap the benefits." Chu Xinran heard this and put his hands behind his back. On the surface, he still looked calm, but his fingers kept shaking. It could be seen that his heart was not so calm. He said in a deep voice, "Then what does Senior Lu want?" Leng Shiqi replied, "I want the heads of the 4 spiritual guards." "For spiritual guards?" Chu Xinran's eyes flashed with doubt. "Yes, this old man and the 4 spiritual guards have an endless hatred, but they have been hiding in the mansion with Bao Pingyi and can't make a move. So, Senior Lu wants to use the matter of Jinshi Street to lure them out. It's not that I look down on Senior, but the 4 spiritual guards are all spirit cultivators in the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm, and it is said that they are also good at joint attacks, comparable to the peak of the spirit transformation realm. Senior, I'm afraid." Chu Xinran's words came to an abrupt end because a dagger was already at his throat. At this time, there was no trace of Leng Shiqi in front of his eyes. City Lord Chu doesn't need to worry about this kind of thing. Leng Shiqi's voice came from behind Chu Xinran. Chu Xinran's heart had already been set off a monstrous wave. As the City Lord, he was at least at the spirit transformation realm, but he couldn't even catch a glimpse of the other party's figure. He said with difficulty, "Senior Lu is really powerful." When Leng Shiqi heard Chu Xinran call him Senior instead of Senior, he knew that this matter was settled. Next, the two discussed some specific plans, and Leng Shiqi left. In the next 2 days, under Chu Xinran's urging, the conflict between the Chinko Hall and the 3 Blades gang in Jinshi Street became more and more intense, and tonight's matter happened. Chapter 141. Leng Shiqi and Chu Xinran stood on the roof and watched the battle not far away. At this moment, Jinshi Street was covered in blood. The battle between Chinko Hall and the 3 Swords gang had reached a climax. Leng Shiqi used a voice-changing technique to change his voice. "City Lord Chu still hasn't made a decision?" Chu Xinran's eyes were locked on Nyekuan. He knew that Nyekuan was not only powerful, but also very scheming. He could be said to be Bao Pingyi's right-hand man. If he could kill him, the 3 Swords gang would suffer a loss. Chu Xinran opened his mouth and said, "Nyekuan." Leng Shiqi did not answer. Instead, a gray cloud came out of his body. When the gray cloud dissipated, he had disappeared. Seeing this scene, Chu Xinran's eyes flashed with traces of fear. On the other side of the battle, Nyekuan and Tian who were fighting the fiercest. Or it could be said that Tian who was even fiercer. He waved his giant axe and cut down countless stalls. Everywhere he went was a mess. From the scene, he did suppress Nyekuan, but in reality, Nyekuan was not injured. Instead, Tian whose aura was a bit chaotic. Astute people could see that Nyekuan was luring Tian who to consume large amounts of spirit power. When Tian whose spirit power ran out, it would be his death. The other leader of Chinko Hall, Ringan, had seen through it. He wanted to remind Tian Hu, but unfortunately, Nyekuan had already lured Tian Hu away. Ringan had to concentrate on dealing with Ning Qi, so he was powerless to do anything. Bang! Tian Hu's heavy axe, which was flickering with dense spiritual light, smashed the roadside stall into pieces. However, it missed once again. When he used his spirit power to attack Nyekuin again, he was shocked to find that he could not use his spirit power for a while. Only then did he notice that more than half of his spirit power had been consumed. Nyekuin had a victorious smile on his face. The long sword in his hand was like a poisonous snake hiding in the dark, waiting for the opportunity to come. Now was the opportunity. Nyekuin's long sword shook and instantly stabbed out several times. Each sword was aimed at Tianhu's vital points. Tianhu was shocked and thought that he had been careless this time. Just as Nyekuin's sword was about to pierce Tianhu, a short figure suddenly appeared behind him, and a sharp dagger pierced his heart from the back. Nyekuin's body suddenly trembled and he quickly turned around. His sword suddenly became steady and he narrowly blocked the dagger. Leng Shiqi did not expect Nyekuin's reaction to be so fast. Nyekuin's body was like a floating in the air. At this time, Nyekuin's heart was already in his throat. He could not help but feel a bit of fear because he could not keep up with his opponent's speed. Zeng! Zeng's sword strew Inza's left, two purple swords in the air. Under the two gale slashes, Nyekuin's sword was broken and he died. Zeng's, Nyekuin's cultivation was on par with Leng Shiqi's, but there was a huge difference in theirs. In addition, he had already used up a lot of his. He was ambushed by Leng Shiqi and died. At this moment, Tianhu's two tiger eyes were wide open. He still couldn't believe his own eyes. Nyekuin, who almost killed him, died just like that? He was almost killed in an instant. He was a spirit cultivator at the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm. Could that person be an expert at the fourth realm of the sky realm? However, Leng Shiqi, who had killed Nyekuin, said to him, "The Hall Master sent me to help you. Go and support Ringan." "The Hall Master sent you? How come I don't know?" Although Tianhu had a bad temper, he was not stupid. The person in front of him was too strange, and he could not help but be suspicious. How can you understand the Hall Master's thoughts? Do you know how much credit it is to kill Nyekuin and Ningqi? Hurry up and go. Leng Shiqi pretended to be angry and shouted. All right. When Tianhu heard the word credit, he immediately threw away the doubts in his heart and turned to kill Ningqi. Leng Shiqi looked left and right. The place where they were fighting was far away from the battlefield, so there weren't many people who would notice this place. Fortunately, Tianhu had brought Nyekuin here. Otherwise, he would have to spend more effort. Then he once again hid in the darkness and disappeared. After that, the news of the death of the Three Blades Gang's fourth master, Nyekuin, spread out at a strange speed. It reached the ears of the leaders of the Three Blades Gang on the surrounding streets, and also reached Bao Pingyi's ears. But Bao Pingyi smashed the teacup in his hand. He suppressed the anger in his heart and asked in a deep voice, "Is the news true?" The person who delivered the news nodded and said, "It's absolutely true. Right now, there's only 7th Master in Jinshi Street. I'm afraid he won't be able to hold on for long. They're all trash. Go quickly, get the nearby 3rd brother, 5th brother, and 6th brother to bring reinforcements. Tonight, I want to see Tianhu and Ringan's heads." "Yes." A moment later, a large number of Three Blades Gang's reinforcements arrived at Jinshi Street. Ringan and Tianhu were caught unprepared. Facing the 4 leaders of the Three Blades Gang, they could only bitterly defend, and the injuries on their bodies became more and more serious. The bastards of the Three Blades Gang don't abide by the rules, right? Go call for reinforcements. Tianhu shouted. Not long after, hundreds of Chinko Hall members rushed over. Both sides were fighting with their blood rushing to their heads, and no longer had any scruples. The more intense the fight, the more people died. The strange thing was, in some corners, there would always be people who died inexplicably. Both groups of people were crazily killing with red eyes. In Bao Pengyi's residence, there was an endless stream of people delivering news. "President, Chinko Hall's reinforcements have also arrived. They have more people than us. Good news. 7th Master has beheaded Chinko Hall's leader, Tianhu. Oh no, 7th Master is gone." You must avenge 7th Master President. However, Bao Pengyi didn't say anything. Only the armrest under his hand had a few cracks from the tremors. He thought to himself, could it be that Chinko Hall wants to fight with me? Just for a small Jinshi Street? No, Go Huarong has been in charge of Chinko Hall for more than 10 years and has always been conservative. He won't be so impulsive. Something is strange. Just as he was thinking, another person rushed in from outside. He ran in with snot and tears, and shouted in grief and indignation, President, the 3rd Lord and the 5th Lord are both dead. What? Bao Pengyi instantly crushed the armrest of the chair into powder. How is it possible? Chinko Hall's Hall Master, Go Huarong, has personally taken action. Go Huarong has taken action? Bao Pengyi doubted the reliability of the news at first. According to his understanding of Go Huarong, he wouldn't do such a thing. In this way, they would really have to fight to the death. Although he knew that this day would come, he never thought it would come so soon. Vaguely, he felt that there must be something fishy. At this time, he was still hesitating whether to go out and fight. At this time, one of the 4 spirit guards behind him said, with us 4 brothers here, there is no need for President Bao to worry. We can take advantage of this opportunity to help you occupy Shangyang City. It will be more convenient for you in the future. After Bao Pengyi heard this, he finally made up his mind. His aura of the 8th layer of the spirit transformation realm spread out and led everyone to Jinshi Street. Chapter 142. On the other side, Leng Shiqi, who was hiding near Jinshi Street, was surprised to see the hall master of Chinko Hall, Go Huarong, suddenly appear. However, he didn't have time to think about it and left the place because he knew that Bao Pengyi would definitely come out. In the past 2 days, Leng Shiqi had secretly walked around the entire Shangyang City. The system map had clearly shown the terrain of Shangyang City. Therefore, Leng Shiqi hurriedly rushed to the Bao residence, which was the only way to get to Jinshi Street. However, he didn't know that Chu Xinran, who was watching all of this from afar, sneered softly. Bao Pengyi and the 4 spiritual guards walked through the dark street, feeling a little uneasy in his heart. He felt that something was not quite right, but he had no choice but to come out. He could not just stand by and watch the people of Chinko Hall slaughter his gang members. Suddenly, his years of cautiousness made him extremely sensitive to danger. At this moment, he was keenly aware of a sense of crisis. Bao Pengyi's body suddenly stopped, his feet drawing 2 marks on the ground. Then, he pulled out the 2 long swords at his waist and looked around vigilantly. The 4 spiritual guards instantly protected Bao Pengyi from all sides. One of them asked, President Bao, what did you find? No, I just feel some danger. Bao Pengyi's eyes swept around and said carefully. The 4 spiritual guards' faces sank. President Bao is too sensitive. Let's go to Jinshi Street. Moreover, with us 4 brothers here, we can ensure President Bao's safety. This. Bao Pengyi hesitated. The feeling of danger was still there. It was like a fierce beast hiding in the grass staring at its prey, and he was the prey. As long as there was a slight flaw, he would be buried in the tiger's mouth. This feeling made him very uncomfortable. However, the 4 spiritual guards were not Bao Pengyi's subordinates, but disciples of Heavenly Cloud Tower. He didn't have the qualifications to order them. However, he thought about it again. With these 4 guards from the Spirit Cultivator sect, unless an expert of the 4 realms of heaven appeared, he really had nothing to be afraid of. If a Spirit Cultivator of the 4 realms of heaven came to kill him, he would accept it. Thinking of this, Bao Pengyi nodded and continued to rush towards Jinshi Street. However, he didn't put down the long saber in his hand. Patter! However, they had only taken a few steps when a soft sound suddenly came from the dark corner of the street. Who is it? Bao Pengyi stopped again and immediately assumed a stance. His 2 blades emitted traces of spiritual light as he shouted towards that direction. The 4 spiritual guards also took it seriously this time, and held their respective sword hilts one after another. Unexpectedly, a few cat meows came from the darkness. It was actually a cat. Bao Pengyi heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. At this time, The 4 spiritual guards were a little unhappy. They felt as if they had been played. Although they belonged to a third-rate sect, they were still disciples of true spirit cultivators. They didn't think much of a small gang like the Three Swords Gang, so they were very unhappy with the fact that they had to protect Bao Pingyi. In their eyes, Bao Pingyi was just a clown. Now, this clown's antics were even more annoying. Bao Pingyi was also a little embarrassed. However, he couldn't say anything and could only move forward. After a short while, the road was smooth and there were no more accidents. They could already faintly hear the sounds of fighting coming from Jinsher Street. Their footsteps couldn't help but quicken. At this time, a black shadow suddenly appeared from the side of the street. Bao Pingyi's 2 blades suddenly swung out. 2 thin blade lights flashed past and pierced the black shadow. Cough, President. President. That person's eyes widened as he looked at Bao Pingyi in disbelief. However, the vitality in his eyes immediately dissipated. Bao Pingyi pushed the person away and discovered that this person was actually a small leader of the Three Swords Gang. Looking at his injured appearance, he should have just retreated from the battlefield. He actually killed his own people? At this time, Bao Pingyi also felt that he was a little too sensitive. As the saying goes, the first drum of energy, the second will be weak, and the third will be exhausted. Now, the vigilance in his heart was slowly decreasing. At the moment when his vigilance was at its weakest, a purple crescent blade light suddenly bloomed under the body of the small leader who had fallen to the ground. The blade light whistled out as if it was going to cut through the night. It slashed towards Bao Pingyi with an astonishingly sharp intent. Bao Pingyi was aghast. He used the shortest time to throw out a wooden lump and quickly retreated. At the same time, he crushed his waist token. The wooden lump kept making ka-ka sounds in midair. It was like a mechanism that rapidly changed and gradually formed the shape of a shield. Unfortunately, this shield had not been completely formed yet and was instantly cut in half by the purple crescent blade light. The purple crescent blade light's momentum did not decrease. At this time, a blue brilliance suddenly flashed in front of Bao Pingyi and turned into a water curtain. Puff! The blade light slashed onto the water curtain and instantly sank into it. It was almost directly cutting through the water curtain. However, the water curtain had extremely strong tenacity and forcibly blocked the blade light. However, the water curtain was also rapidly fading. After holding on for 2 breaths, it finally turned into a bubble. However, the purple crescent blade light had also consumed a lot of spiritual power and shrunk by more than half. However, it still slashed towards Bao Pingyi like a shadow. Bao Pingyi growled and waved his 2 blades again and again, slashing out dozens of blade lights. Unfortunately, when those blade lights touched the purple crescent blade light, they were easily cut into pieces. However, because of this, the purple crescent blade light shrunk again. In the end, it only had less than 10% of its power left. When it slashed Bao Pingyi, it produced a crisp, dang sound. Bao Pingyi's clothes were torn, but his body was unharmed. This was because he was wearing a golden soft armor underneath. The final blade light only left a shallow blade mark on the soft armor. Bao Pingyi's whole body was covered in a layer of cold sweat. His heart was also in his throat. He had calculated everything and taken precautions, but he never thought that someone would use such a strange method to assassinate him. What was even more terrifying was that the blade light just now was too terrifying. It had consecutively destroyed 2 of his life-saving trump cards and even exposed a 3rd one. What kind of blade technique is that? It's so terrifying. Is it really a spiritual pulse realm expert who came to kill me? Bao Pingyi was horrified. He was really scared by that blade. Leng Shiqi, who attacked, did not expect that Bao Pingyi would have so many life-saving trump cards. He had thought that the half-moon rapid light slash would at least be able to injure Bao Pingyi, but in the end, Bao Pingyi was still intact. He knew that things were troublesome, because the 4 spiritual guards had attacked. It took a long time to describe, but in fact, from Leng Shiqi's half-moon rapid light slash to Bao Pingyi revealing the golden soft armor, it all happened in a flash. The 4 spiritual guards did not have time to react, and all of this had already happened. At this time, the 4 of them had an unusually rich expression on their faces. There was surprise, shock, shame, and even a trace of fear. At the same time, they all had the same thought. If the target of that blade light was me, would I be able to survive? But in the next moment, they were all furious. The mission given to them by the sect was to protect Bao Pingyi, but he had almost been killed. If this matter was ruined, they would not be able to escape the blame. That assassin had to die. The 4 spiritual guards pulled out their spirit swords at the same time. After releasing their mid-stage spirit transformation realm auras, they faintly felt like they were one. Then the 4 swords stabbed out. At the same time, Bao Pingyi turned around and fled. Chapter 143. Leng Shiqi saw that he was about to be stopped by the 4 spirit guards, and Bao Pingyi was running in the opposite direction. His speed was not slow and he had a movement technique, so he felt a bit anxious. It has to be said that there were more than 100 guards from the Bao mansion in the direction Bao Pingyi was running. Bao Pingyi and the 4 spirit guards were faster, so they were one step ahead. If Bao Pingyi met up with the guards, he would have no chance at all. I have to kill him before the guards arrive. However, at this moment, the swords of the 4 spirit guards fell. 4 steady sword moves were thrust out, carrying with them a scorching aura. The spiritual power in Leng Shiqi's body circulated rapidly, and a group of cold air suddenly gushed out. Then the cold air spread out and instantly engulfed the 4 spiritual guards. In the blink of an eye, their bodies were covered with a thin layer of ice crystals. A spirit cultivator? The 4 spirit guards were secretly shocked. Although this layer of ice was not very strong and they only needed 2 or 3 breaths to break out, they realized that their opponent was not simple. Leng Shiqi took this opportunity to rush out. He stepped on the black fog and his body floated in the wind. He looked slow, but he was actually as fast as the wind as he caught up to Bao Pingyi. Bao Pingyi felt the movement behind him. He turned around and saw Leng Shiqi chasing after him with a saber in his hand. Moreover, the distance between them was getting closer and closer. Bao Pingyi was shocked and his face turned ashen. There was a flash of light in his eyes. Instead of running away and being caught, it was better to fight head-on. As long as he could delay until the 4 spirit guards and the other guards arrived, he would be safe. He might even be able to kill this assassin. At this moment, Bao Pingyi suddenly turned around and his powerful aura of the 8th layer of the spirit transformation realm surged. He crossed his blades and the blades shined brightly. Leng Shiqi saw that Bao Pingyi was attacking instead of running and was very happy. He thought, there is no door to hell, yet you still dare to charge in. Leng Shiqi raised his saber to meet the attack. When the 2 of them got closer, Leng Shiqi was just about to use his half-moon swift slash. However, Bao Pingyi unexpectedly let go of the saber in his right hand. The next moment, Bao Pingyi pulled out a short knife from somewhere and pointed it at Leng Shiqi's vital point from an extremely strange angle. The 3rd saber. In fact, many people had always had a question. That was, Bao Pingyi was clearly best at dual blades, but the faction he had single-handedly created was called the 3 Blades Guild? Then why wasn't it called the Twin Sabers Association? At this moment, Leng Shiqi finally understood. Bao Pingyi had been hiding his 3rd weapon all this time. Not only was the blade fast, but the angle was also ruthless. The entire blade also flashed with a faint green light. Obviously, it had been dipped in poison. Leng Shiqi used the floating spirit steps to dodge. At the same time, he used the curved blade to block and slightly avoided the tricky attack. Bao Pingyi turned his body and slashed with the long and short sabers in his hands. At the same time, the other long saber was clamped by his neck. He twisted his head, and the last long saber also came stabbing over. He was actually using 3 sabers with 2 hands. It was amazing. Moreover, his attack rhythm was very fast. His wrist, elbow, shoulder. Even every joint in his body could be used to operate the 3rd saber. Leng Shiqi had never fought with such an opponent before. He did not have any similar battle experience. Furthermore, Bao Pingyi's cultivation was far higher than his. He was actually at a disadvantage. Leng Shiqi also admitted that he had underestimated Bao Pingyi. The outside world was different from the Blood Fog Island. On the Blood Fog Island, No one had much time to study spirit techniques, so he could do whatever he wanted with his perfect spirit techniques. But in this great world, a spirit cultivator like Bao Pingyi who had lived for decades did not have much hope of breaking through to the fourth realm of the sky realm. He had a lot of time to hone his spirit techniques. His spirit energy foundation might not be as pure as Ling Shiqi's, but his decades of battle experience was far from what Ling Shiqi could compare to. What was worse was that at this time, the 4 spirit guards also broke out of the ice and ran over. Ling Shiqi knew that he could not delay any longer. In the face of Bao Pengyi's rain-like attacks, Ling Shiqi opened his mouth and let out a roar that resounded through the night sky. This sudden roar caused Bao Pengyi's ears to buzz, and his attacks instantly slowed down. Ling Shiqi hurriedly retreated a few steps. His left palm shone with a faint starlight. Then, with a push of his palm, a turbulent cold air sprayed towards Bao Pengyi. The dense cold air froze Bao Pengyi in the blink of an eye, as well as the 4 spirit guards who had just rushed over behind him. Spirit attack path of ice. The ice that sealed Bao Pengyi quickly cracked. Ling Shiqi knew that he could not trap him for long. His left hand reached to his waist and pulled out another scimitar. Then, Ling Shiqi's spirit energy flowed rapidly, crazily pouring into the 2 scimitars. A few purple veins appeared on the blade, and 2 extremely bright saber lights shone. In the next moment, 2 stunning purple crescent blade lights whizzed out from the blade, splitting the sky in a forked shape and swallowing Bao Pengyi. Bao Pengyi was aghast and could only use his weapon to block in front of him. Only a few ka-ka sounds were heard. The 2 purple blade lights instantly shattered Bao Pengyi's weapon and landed on his golden silk soft armor. The soft armor was made of an unknown material. It was not only hard but also flexible. It blocked the blade lights, causing Bao Pengyi's body to fly backwards. But after a few breaths, the golden silk soft armor finally broke. Bao Pengyi's mouth was wide open in horror. He had just seen the 4 spirit guards frozen and knew that the person in front of him was also a spirit master. But he never thought that Ling Shiqi could almost instantaneously release such a large area of effect spell. He was shocked, he was angry, he was unwilling. He had been careful for decades, but in the end he was still going to die under the assassination of others. The cards he had painstakingly accumulated for decades could not stop the footsteps of the god of death. Just when he thought that he was going to die, for Scorching Sword Chi suddenly appeared and consumed half of the blade light's spirit energy. Immediately, For Swords appeared in front of Bao Pingyi at the same time to help him block the 2 purple moon blade lights. The blade lights and the swords collided, making a clanging sound and creating a dazzling spark. In the end, the blade lights were exhausted, but the 4 swords were also cut open. The 4 spirit guards had arrived at the most critical moment. Bao Pingyi had 1 foot in the door of death, but he was pulled back. He had escaped death and was gasping for breath. The 4 spirit guards protected Bao Pingyi behind them, and one by one, they glared at Ling Shiqi. Tonight's battle could be said to be extremely aggrieved because so far, they had not really fought with the assassin, but Bao Pingyi, who they wanted to protect, had almost died. Die! The 4 spirit guards shouted in unison, and then rushed together. Ling Shiqi saw that Bao Pingyi had 2 deep blood marks in front of him. He was seriously injured, but it was not fatal. Facing the 4 spirit guards, Ling Shiqi raised his hand and shot out a dagger. The 4 spirit guards were just about to dodge, but they were puzzled again. It was because the dagger shot by Ling Shiqi was not aimed at them, nor at Bao Pingyi behind them, but flew over their heads at an oblique angle. Did he miss? They could not understand, but they did not need to understand. At this time, the 4 spirit guards just wanted to kill this person. So, the dagger continued to shoot. Just when the dagger was about to hit Bao Pingyi's head, a stone pillar as thick as his waist strangely appeared under him and lifted him into the air. Poochie, the dagger hit Bao Pingyi's throat. Chapter 144. Ling Shiqi had used such a strange method to kill Bao Pingyi, causing the 4 spiritual guards to be stunned. Bao Pingyi's death meant that their mission had failed. The 4 spiritual guards originally thought that this was just a very simple mission. In a small Shangyang city that did not even have a fourth realm of sky human, who could kill Bao Pingyi who was under their heavy protection. But Bao Pingyi was really dead. His death was inexplicable, and his death was very strange. One could imagine that when they returned to the Heavenly Cloud Tower, they would inevitably face severe punishment from the sect. What made the four spiritual guards feel even more humiliated was that from the beginning to the end, they seemed to have been played by the assassin. As spirit cultivator sects, they simply could not bear it. So they immediately rushed over angrily. For streams of sword qi appeared at the same time, wishing that they could tear Ling Shiqi into pieces. Ling Shiqi was relieved after killing Bao Pingyi, but according to the rules of the Blood Robe Pavilion, he had to bring back the assassination target's head before he could hand over the mission. At this time, when he saw the four spiritual guards rushing over, his eyes revealed a hint of annoyance. He had never fought with the four spiritual guards. Firstly, he was afraid that they would stop him from killing Bao Pingyi. Secondly, he did not want to be involved with the Heavenly Cloud Tower. So he raised his hand and four earth walls suddenly rose from the ground. The four spiritual guards rushed over and crashed into the earth walls. The earth walls did not stop them for long, only stopping them for a moment. However, it was during this pause that Ling Shiqi stepped on the black fog and rushed to Bao Pingyi's side. Then he held the dagger and took Bao Pingyi's head. At this moment, Ling Shiqi's mission was finally completed. Although there were some twists and turns in the process, his goal was achieved. At this time, more than 100 figures rushed over. They were the guards that Bao Pingyi had bribed. When they arrived, the first thing they saw was Bao Pingyi's headless body. They all opened their mouths wide in surprise, and their hearts were set off huge waves. Their president, Bao Pingyi, who was at the 8th level of the spirit transformation realm, was actually dead. He died under the protection of the four spiritual guards? Could it be that a spirit cultivator of the four realms of heaven had made a move? At this time, some people even began to wonder if it was the four spiritual guards who had killed their president. One of the four spiritual guards pointed at Ling Shiqi and shouted, "This is the person who killed your president, Bao Pingyi." Hearing this, many of the sect members were furious when they saw Ling Shiqi. They all raised their weapons and pressed forward. Ling Shiqi sneered in his heart. Just as he was about to leave, he heard neat footsteps coming from both ends of the street. He paused and turned his head to look. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of spirit cultivators wearing silver light armor and holding standard weapons blocked the Ling Shiqi, the four spiritual guards, and more than 100 Three Blades gang members. There were even dozens of archers with arrows knocked on their bowstrings, ready to shoot at any time. It's the city guards. Why are the city guards here? Could this be Chu Xinran's doing? What should we do now? The people of the Three Blades gang were suddenly in a state of panic. At this time, a middle-aged man walked out from the group of city guards. He was the city lord of Shangyang City, Chu Xinran. Chu Xinran's gaze first looked at the sullen four spiritual guards, then turned to Ling Shiqi, and finally landed on Bao Pingyi's head. He revealed a meaningful smile and said, "Mr. Liu, didn't you say you wanted to deal with the four spiritual guards? Why did you kill Bao Pingyi?" When Ling Shiqi saw Chu Xinran appear with the city guards, he knew that he had been tricked. His eyes flashed with a cold light, and he said in a hoarse voice, "What do you want to do, Mr. Chu?" Chu Xinran casually straightened his sleeves and said cheerfully, "Old Mr. Liu has done me a great favor. I am truly grateful to you. Since Mr. Liu has a grudge with the four spiritual guards, I will help you get rid of them." Chu Xinran wants to kill the four spiritual guards? A trace of doubt flashed through Ling Shiqi's heart. He quickly skipped through many thoughts in his mind. Combined with the sudden appearance of Chinko Hall's Hall Master Go Huarong in Jinsher Street, he faintly connected everything together. He was secretly shocked. So all of this has been under Chu Xinran's control all along. He must have secretly joined forces with Go Huarong to find an opportunity to severely damage or even destroy the Three Blades gang. Jinsher Street was a bait, and it just so happened that my appearance added fuel to the fire. What a good Chu Xinran. Thinking of this, Ling Shiqi couldn't help but secretly admire Chu Xinran. This Chu Xinran had quickly gathered the city guards and joined forces with Chinko Hall when he first arrived. This method was really extraordinary. But all of this has nothing to do with me. Leng Shiqi thought to himself. Now that he had completed his mission, he had no intention of participating in the power struggle in Shangyang City, so he said, "Since City Lord Chu has the heart, please do as you wish. This old man has other matters to attend to, so I won't disturb you." With that, Leng Shiqi hid in the dark alley behind him and disappeared. Chu Xinran didn't stop him. He turned his head and shouted to the Three Blades Gang. The Three Blades Gang has been bullying the people and dominating the city for many years, causing Shangyang City to be filled with complaints. As the city lord, I naturally have to punish them. However, since the main culprit, Bao Pingyi, is dead, you can leave as long as you promise not to cause trouble in the future. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. When Chu Xinran said these words, many of the gang members were moved. Most of these people were actually hired by Bao Pingyi with money. They only had this relationship of interest between them. When they saw that only Leng Shiqi had cut off their source of income, they had dared to act. But now, they didn't have the courage to face hundreds of city guards. It was true that they wanted money, but they wanted their lives even more. Immediately, 80% of the gang members fled in all directions, leaving only 20 or 30 people with sullen faces and motionless faces. These people were the ones who had followed Bao Pingyi to build the foundation of the Three Blades Gang. They were the ones who were truly loyal to Bao Pingyi. At this moment, even though they knew that they would die, they still stayed. Chu Xinran sighed with emotion. Alas, there are still people who are so loyal to a selfish person like Bao Pingyi. Alas, what a pity. Shoot the arrows. Wait. Just after Chu Xinran gave the order, the four spiritual guards suddenly shouted, "City Lord Chu, you should know who we are. Since Bao Pingyi is dead, we have nothing to do with the Three Blades Gang. We won't interfere in your fight. Goodbye." "Oh? Who allowed you to leave?" Chu Xinran said with a sinister smile. "What? Chu Xinran, do you know who we are? We are the disciples of the Heavenly Cloud Pavilion. How dare you touch us?" Chu Xinran sneered. "Humph, when you are all dead, who will know it was me? Shoot the arrows." So, dozens of arrows fell like a dense rain. The remaining members of the Three Blades Gang were suddenly drowned in the arrows, and miserable screams rang out. The four spiritual guards could only bitterly resist. Even though they were in the spirit transformation realm, the arrows were not ordinary arrows. The people who shot the arrows were all spirit cultivators, so they were not easy to block. In the blink of an eye, all of them were injured. Chu Xinran waved his hand and hundreds of city guards slowly closed in. The four spiritual guards' faces were ashen. Leng Shiqi, who was hiding in the dark, quietly left. Chapter 145. Tonight was destined to be a sleepless night. The sounds of fighting could be heard throughout Shangyang City. Ordinary people could only hide in their houses and pray for a sense of security. They could only silently wait for the changes in Shangyang City. After Leng Shiqi left, he did not directly return to Shadewind Ridge. Instead, he went to Jinsher Street to take a look. The situation here was already one-sided. In fact, at the beginning, both sides had lost a team leader, so they could be considered to be evenly matched. However, the hall master of Chinko Hall, Go Huarong, personally made a move. None of the leaders of the Three Swords Gang could stop him and suffered heavy casualties. However, they did not scatter in all directions. They were still trying their best to hold on because they still had confidence and hope in their hearts. That confidence and hope came from Bao Pingyi and the four spiritual guards. As long as Bao Pingyi arrived, they would be able to stabilize the situation. As long as the four spiritual guards arrived, they would be able to turn defense into offense. Unfortunately, they did not know that Bao Pingyi was already dead and the four spiritual guards were not far from death. Leng Shiqi shook his head slightly. He had already predicted the outcome of the Three Swords Gang. Then, he turned around and ran towards a certain place. That was Bao Mansion. Not long after, Leng Shiqi quietly sneaked into the mansion. Now, There were only 20 to 30 guards and some servants in Bao Mansion. Lung Shiqi was completely unstoppable. Byakugan, activate. He activated Byakugan and the entire Bao Mansion was within his field of vision. The target he was looking for was Bao Pengyi's private vault. Bao Pengyi was the leader of the Three Swords Gang and had taken root in Shangyang City for more than 10 years. During this time, he had collected countless precious resources. Moreover, he was a cautious person. It was impossible for him to give these resources to others for safekeeping. It was also impossible for him to build a vault in his mansion. Therefore, it was very likely that he had secretly built a secret chamber. This was the secret room that Lung Shiqi was looking for. There really is one. With the help of Byakugan's X-ray vision and the system map, Lung Shiqi quickly discovered that there was indeed a secret chamber 30 feet underground. Moreover, he could clearly see that there were more than 10 hidden mechanisms all over the secret chamber. Lung Shiqi immediately used Gaia's hand to drill into the ground, sneaking directly into the secret room and quickly destroying all the mechanisms. Only then did he begin to carefully observe the secret room. The secret chamber wasn't very big, only about 20 feet in radius. There were many large boxes on the ground, and there were some wooden shelves on the surrounding walls. There were also some things displayed on the shelves, but there weren't many of them. Lung Shiqi first opened the big boxes. Most of the things inside were gold, silver, and other treasures. He didn't care for these things. After all, to a spirit cultivator, spirit stones were the real currency. Of course, he still packed them all up. In the last few boxes, there were some spirit tools. There were first and second tier spirit tools, but unfortunately, there were no third tier spirit tools. Lung Shiqi put away a 3-part spear. This spear could be divided into 3 parts, and there was a chain in the middle, making it more flexible to use. As for the rest of the spiritual equipment, he sold them all to the system for more than 300 system coins. After that, Lung Shiqi began to look at the things on the wooden shelf. Basically, there were some rare herbs on the shelf. They were mainly materials for refining pills. These resources were useless to Lung Shiqi, so he threw them all to the system. Now, he had 641 system coins. It was enough for 6 intermediate lottery draws. It seemed like the harvest was not bad, but Lung Shiqi's eyebrows were tightly knitted. Because he had searched the entire secret chamber, but he couldn't find a single spirit stone, pill, cultivation technique, or spirit skill. These were the most important cultivation resources, but there was none. Impossible. Could it be that there are other secret chambers in the Bao residence? Lung Shiqi whispered to himself, but he couldn't find any other secret chambers even after using supercilious eyes and the system map. In the end, he could only sigh and leave the secret chamber. On the other side, there was only one person left in the 4 spirit guards. There weren't many injuries on this person's body, but his face was already deathly pale. Because there were several swords on his neck, if he dared to move, his head would be separated from his body. At this time, Chu Exin Ran walked in front of him and whispered, "Others call you the 4 spirit guards. This Chu still doesn't know your name." "Ji Gu," he carefully said. Chu Exin Ran's face came in front of his face and asked, "So it's Brother Ji, do you think this Chu will kill you?" Ji Gu suddenly felt a pressure on his heart. He silently swallowed his saliva and said, "Ji Gu is willing to listen to City Lord Chu's orders. It's good to talk to smart people. Then tell me, who killed the other 3-4 spirit guards?" Ji Gu's eyes spun as he thought for a bit and said, It's that assassin. He came to kill Bao Pengyi, but we couldn't protect Bao Pengyi and suffered heavy casualties." Chu Exin Ran clapped his hands and said, "Very good. Then do you know the assassin's name?" "Well, his surname seems to be Lu." Before Ji Gu could finish, Chu Exin Ran interrupted him. "No, his surname is not Lu, but Lung. He's a fugitive named Lung Shiqi." "How do you know so clearly? Could it be that you—" Ji Gu suddenly covered his mouth, his eyes filled with fear. He was afraid of being killed. Chu Exin Ran sneered and said, "You should go back to Heavenly Cloud Tower later. You should know what to say and what not to say, right?" I know, Ji Gu hurriedly said. But this Chu can't believe you, so I can only ask Brother Ji to take this pill. Chu Xen Ran took out a dark green pill and said. Ji Gu's eyes suddenly showed some desperation. Brother Ji, are you not willing? Ji Gu trembled and said, after I go back, I will report to the sect as Mayor Chu said, but if I suddenly die, the sect will doubt my words. Don't worry, I'm not that stupid. You're more useful alive than dead. After a while, someone will contact you and give you the antidote. Chu Xen Ran said and put the pill in front of Yoshitsugu's mouth. Ji Gu knew that his life was in Chu Xen Ran's hands, and he also knew that from now on, he would become a chess piece in Chu Xen Ran's hands. But at this time, if he didn't take it, he would die. He had to close his eyes and swallow the pill. Chu Xen Ran smiled and waved his hand, let him go. The surrounding city guards withdrew their weapons, and Ji Gu immediately sat on the ground, panting wildly and couldn't help coughing a few times. Chu Xen Ran didn't even look at him and led his men to Bao Mansion. Soon after, Chu Xen Ran rushed into Bao Mansion with the city guards and searched everywhere. Soon, they found the secret room where Leng Shiqi had been. However, when he saw that it was empty, his face suddenly became gloomy. Chapter 146. The next morning, the residents and peddlers of Shangyang City pushed open their doors as usual to prepare for today's work. The two streets where the battle had taken place last night had already been washed clean. There was no trace of blood, but the air was still filled with the smell of blood. Leng Shiqi had returned to his original appearance. His wide black clothes covered half of his face as he walked on the street. He had not returned to the Shadowwind Ridge to hand in the mission because he still had something to do. That was to replenish his spirit skills. In the later stages of Blood Mist Island, for some reason, resources such as cultivation methods and spirit skills became fewer and fewer. Instead, there were more and more spirit stones and pills. And ever since Leng Shiqi left Blood Mist Island, he had only cultivated the floating spirit steps. In other words, Leng Shiqi had not expanded his spirit skills for a long time. Right now, his sword, saber, fist, and spear techniques had already fused into a corresponding powerful move, but the rest were still incomplete. Leng Shiqi planned to buy some palm techniques, leg techniques, and finger techniques in Shangyang City. On one hand, he could directly increase his combat strength, and on the other hand, he could use them to see if he could fuse them into a powerful spirit skill. He patted the 100 or so spirit stones in the bag at his waist and walked into the Spirit Cultivator commercial street. Most of the residents in each city were ordinary people. Although spirit cultivators and ordinary people lived in the same city, they were from two completely different worlds. Therefore, every city had streets specially prepared for spirit cultivators, known as the Spirit Cultivator commercial street. Only spirit cultivators could enter the Spirit Cultivator commercial street. Even if it was a shop worker, even if it was a handyman, he had to be a spirit cultivator. The scale of the Spirit Cultivator commercial street in different cities was also different. And in a small city like Shangyang City, there was only one street. When Leng Shiqi turned into the Spirit Cultivator commercial street, there were a few people standing guard on the street. When they saw him walking over, they wanted to stop him. Leng Shiqi did not stop walking or say a word. The spirit energy in his body moved and he emitted the aura of the spirit transformation realm. Those people immediately returned to their original positions obediently. Leng Shiqi walked straight into the Spirit Cultivator commercial street. It was still early and there were not many people on the street. He then walked into a shop. After a while, he came out, but his expression didn't seem to be very good. Then he entered 4 shops in succession, all of which sold spiritual techniques. When he came out of the last shop, his expression was a little strange. It was a mixture of joy and bitterness. He muttered to himself, I didn't think spirit skills would be such a scarce resource in this world. It turned out that Leng Shiqi had visited 5 shops that sold spiritual techniques in a row, but he had gained very little. Most of the goods in the shop were materials and spirit tools, but there were very few cultivation methods and spirit techniques. Because cultivation methods and spirit techniques were basically in the hands of the various spirit cultivator sects, The ones that could be sold in the shops were all unintentionally leaked out. Even if there were, their ranks were not high. They were only at the first or second level. He didn't even see a single third-level spiritual skill. Moreover, the price was ridiculously high. Even an ordinary level 2 spiritual skill would cost around 100 spirit stones. Leng Shiqi felt a little weak in his heart. He originally thought that his spirit stones weren't small, but it turned out that it was only enough to buy a level 2 spiritual skill. He felt that the price was too high, so much so that he began to miss the days on Blood Mist Island. However, he finally realized the depth of the Blood Robe Pavilion's foundation. He still remembered that there were thousands of low-level spiritual skills on display on the first floor of the Blood Book Hall. Moreover, as long as he was promoted to Black-Clothed Assassin, he would be able to obtain a level 3 spiritual skill for free. This kind of treatment was not something that an ordinary sect could give. Later, Leng Shiqi had an idea. He found another way and requested to see the spiritual skills. 4 of the 5 shops agreed. Unfortunately, 2 of them only took out the real spiritual skills, so he used his unlimited skill points to secretly learn 2 level 2 spiritual skills. They were Forest Front Finger and Poisoned Fire Palm. At the time, Leng Shiqi rejected them because they were too difficult to cultivate. The shop owners didn't have any complaints because these 2 spiritual skills were very difficult to cultivate. For example, if one mastered Forest Front Finger, one finger could turn into a dense forest of finger shadows. However, to cultivate it, one had to polish one finger for many years, which took a very long time. As for the other Poison Fire Palm, it didn't take too long to cultivate, but one had to soak one's hands in poison every day. Moreover, it had to be cultivated in an extremely hot environment. Of course, after successfully cultivating it, one's palm strength would contain fire poison. Once the fire poison entered the body, it would continuously corrode the opponent's meridians. It could be said to be extremely vicious. Most importantly, the compatibility between the Poison Fire Palm and the 6 Yang Palm was extremely high. Leng Shiqi was confident that he could fuse them together. Thinking that he had earned 2 level 2 spiritual skills for free, Leng Shiqi felt relieved. He immediately walked out of the Spirit Cultivator Business Street and prepared to go to the Een Wind Ridge branch to submit the mission. However, not long after he walked out of the Spirit Cultivator Business Street, his body suddenly paused. He turned his head to look at a shop on the right. It was Mao Kai's coffin shop. Leng Shiqi thought to himself, so this guy actually opened the coffin shop here. No wonder he was able to collect so much information. At this moment, Mao Kai happened to see Leng Shiqi as soon as he appeared in the shop. He hurriedly gave Leng Shiqi a few glances and then entered the house. Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes. Then he took a big detour and quietly snuck into the coffin shop. Mao Kai was shocked when he saw Leng Shiqi suddenly appear in the coffin shop. However, he didn't ask much and immediately said with an anxious expression, "Envoy, it's not good. Someone wants to harm you." Leng Shiqi's heart moved when he heard this. He couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. He had only been in Shangyang City for 2 days and had barely interacted with anyone. Who wanted to harm him? However, his heart immediately skipped a beat as he suddenly thought of someone. However, he deliberately asked in a tone of disbelief, "How is that possible? Who would harm me?" "Envoy, it's true," Leng Shiqi said indifferently. "Then tell me, who wants to harm me?" This, Envoy, you know this little one." Mao Kai rubbed his hands. Leng Shiqi's face turned cold. "Mao Kai, do you think you can get money from me with some groundless information? Besides, I'm about to return to the branch. Even if someone wants to harm me, they won't be able to." Mao Kai was stunned for a moment, then said, "Envoy, this little one can reveal a little to you. Although the person who wants to harm you is in Shangyang City, the method to harm you is outside. As long as the envoy still has to carry out missions in the future, you might fall into a trap." Leng Shiqi saw that Mao Kai didn't seem to be lying to him, so he said, "Okay, tell me. As long as the information is true and the price is reasonable, I won't treat you badly." Mao Kai's face immediately bloomed like a chrysanthemum. However, he immediately said solemnly, Envoy, the person who wants to harm you is Shangyang City's city lord, Chu Xinran. Chapter 147. In the coffin shop, Leng Shiqi listened to Mao Kai's narration, and the more he listened, the more shocked he became. What Mao Kai said was exactly what Chu Xinran told Ji Gu after Leng Shiqi left. After connecting all of this together, Leng Shiqi finally understood that the person who asked the Bloodcloth Pavilion to assassinate Bao Pingyi was Chu Xinran. Maybe when I went to find Chu Xinran he had already guessed my identity, so he agreed to my request so easily, Leng Shiqi thought to himself, and at the same time, he knew where he had miscalculated. He had never thought that his employer was Chu Xinran. Since the Bloodcloth Pavilion strictly kept the identity of the employer a secret, he had never thought about who the employer was from the beginning, which led him to step into Chu Xinran's plan step by step. In the end, Chu Xinran transferred all the resentment of the Heavenly Cloud Tower to him. I actually became a scapegoat. Leng Shiqi could not help but feel resentful. Since he came to this world, he had never been schemed against like this. However, this incident also reminded him that although he had schemed against others on the Blood Fog Island before, his opponents were all young teenagers. Even if some of them were very mature, they were still ignorant of the world. Leng Shiqi, who had lived 2 lives, could easily guess their thoughts. However, now that he had come to the Great Thousand World, the opponents he faced were far from comparable to the teenagers on the Blood Fog Island. It was not only the difference in cultivation realm, but also the difference in scheming and shrewdness. Leng Shiqi secretly decided to be more careful in the future, but he immediately thought of another question. How did Mao Kai know about this? And he knew so clearly? He looked at Mao Kai coldly. Mao Kai smiled and said, "Ambassador, the source of this information is absolutely reliable, so you can rest assured. It's a pity that after I got the news last night, I couldn't find you. Now that Ji Gu has run away overnight, I'm afraid we can't catch up with him." Even if he did not say it, Leng Shiqi could guess most of it. Mao Kai probably had spies among the city guards. Your information is indeed very valuable to me. Tell me, how much do you want? Leng Shiqi admitted that he was a little careless this time. Fortunately, Mao Kai was well informed. Otherwise, it would be a big problem if he encountered people from Tianyun Tower in the future. When Mao Kai heard that he was going to pay, his 2 little eyes immediately narrowed into slits. This lowly one has always been honest with both the old and the young. Furthermore, this lowly one has specially informed the esteemed envoy of the news. This lowly one is showing his sincerity. As you know, this lowly one has to support all the informants in Shangyang City. That's not a small sum of money. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi saw that he wanted to continue being long-winded, so he interrupted, "Just tell me how much it is." Mao Kai didn't say anything. Instead, he stuck out a finger and looked at Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi chuckled and threw out 2 spirit stones. Mao Kai immediately caught the spirit stones and his eyes lit up. However, he hesitated when he picked up the 2nd spirit stone and said, "Esteemed envoy, this?" Leng Shiqi said coldly, "I want all the information about Chu Xinran." When Mao Kai heard this, he seemed to have guessed what Leng Shiqi was going to do. He was immediately shocked. "Esteemed envoy, what are you going to do?" "Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. I just want you to give me information about Chu Xinran. Isn't 1 spirit stone enough?" Mao Kai said hesitantly, But this is against the rules." Leng Shiqi frowned. Mao Kai continued, "Esteemed envoy, you may not know this, but the intelligence disciples of our sect can only provide information to the esteemed envoys who have a mission. If there is no mission, we are not allowed to disclose information at will. After all, we are serving the sect, not selling information." Leng Shiqi understood after hearing this, but he didn't care about this at this time. He said directly, "Since there are sect rules, I won't make things difficult for you. However, rules are dead and people are alive. Do you want to return this spirit stone to me?" Mao Kai's hand holding the spirit stone began to tremble. There was a look of struggle in his eyes. In the end, he handed the spirit stone over and said, "Forgive me, but I can't break the sect rules. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi was a little surprised. He could see that Mao Kai was really a person who loved money as much as his life, but such a person was actually so conservative. What an interesting person. Leng Shiqi thought to himself. He then said, "You are really loyal to the sect, but I also accepted the mission to assassinate Chu Xinran. Esteemed envoy, please don't bully me. I have never received any information about this." Leng Shiqi sat on the chair next to him and said slowly, "I don't have any information now, but I can find someone to go to the blood clothing pavilion with the spirit stone and issue the mission to assassinate Chu Xinran. Then I will accept it myself. It's just a matter of making 2 more trips. At that time, I will still come to you to ask for information. Unfortunately, most of the reward will be taken by the sect, and I will lose out. If I lose out, so be it. As long as I can kill Chu Xinran, I will accept it. Unfortunately, I'm afraid someone won't even get half a spirit stone." After hearing these words, Mao Kai was a little stunned. He really didn't expect Leng Shiqi to think of such a loophole. He still hesitated and said, "Although that is the case, but, seeing that Mao Kai was still hesitating, Leng Shiqi took out 9 spirit stones from his mustard seed bag and placed them on the table. These spirit stones looked crystal clear and faintly emitted a faint spirit light. It was very eye-catching. Leng Shiqi said, "Instead of losing the spirit stones to the sect, it is better to give them to people who need them more. It saves me from making 2 more trips. What do you think?" Leng Shiqi's words were like the last straw that finally crushed Mao Kai's psychological defense. Mao Kai gritted his teeth and said quietly, "Deal. But esteemed envoy, you must not leak this matter. Otherwise, I will die even if I have 10 heads." "Don't worry, I understand," Leng Shiqi replied seriously. Mao Kai looked at the 9 spirit stones on the table and said, "Okay, please wait a moment." Not long after, Mao Kai brought over 2 pieces of information. Leng Shiqi opened them and quickly read them. During this time, his eyes flashed with killing intent. Soon, Leng Shiqi walked out of the coffin shop. At this time, Mao Kai suddenly pounced on the table and stuffed the spirit stones into his arms. His face was full of smiles, but as he took them, he muttered, "I didn't break the rules, I didn't break the rules." When he finished taking all the spirit stones, an extremely soft sound suddenly came from the next room, but he was still keenly aware of it. He immediately stopped smiling and walked to the side room. Then, he opened a secret passage and took out a piece of information. Urgent information? Mao Kai opened it and took a look. His face immediately changed and he shouted, "Not good, esteemed envoy, come back quickly." Chapter 148. Late at night, in the city lord's mansion. Chu Xinran stood in front of his desk, picked up a brush and wrote "Qi" on the desk. At this moment, his face was also very ugly. The reason was that he had no money. That's right, the city lord was now worried about money. He sighed deeply and said to himself, "Alas, I didn't expect that Bao Pingyi would deliberately build a fake secret room. No, I must find a way to find his private treasury. Otherwise, I won't be able to collect the promised salary for the city guards next month." Leng Shiqi, who had been lurking under his study, heard this and understood Chu Xinran's approach. It turns out that he took out all the money in the city lord's mansion to issue an assassination mission for Bao Pingyi in the blood-clothed pavilion and bribed the city guards. He was able to persuade the Chinko clan to take over the streets of the Three Swords Association. As for Chu Xinran, he wanted to use Bao Pingyi's private treasury to make up for the city lord's mansion's deficit. What a good plan. Fortunately, I arrived there 1 step ahead of time. Leng Shiqi came here at this moment for only one purpose, which was to assassinate Chu Xinran. Chu Xinran schemed against him and even put the blame on him for killing the 4 spiritual guards, causing him to provoke the heavenly cloud tower for no reason. He must take revenge. Of course, Leng Shiqi was not impulsive. After reading Chu Xinran's information during the day, he spent the whole day investigating the city lord's mansion. He found that Chu Xinran's vigilance was no less than Bao Pingyi's. Not only were there city guards patrolling around his room, but there were also many hidden sentries. If he acted rashly, he would definitely be surrounded. However, he was not unprepared. To be safe, he used all the system coins he got today for the lottery. The results were mixed. Out of the 6 intermediate lottery prizes, 4 of them were useless materials at this stage. As for the remaining 2, one was a treasure-seeking plate, which could search for nearby treasures. Unfortunately, it could only be used once. The other one was in Leng Shiqi's hands at this moment. Chu Xinran, who was still deep in thought, suddenly noticed the paper on the desk fluttering twice, but there was no wind. Chu Xian immediately became alert. His eyes swept around, but he didn't find any trace of anyone. However, when he turned his gaze back, he was shocked to see a short figure sitting on the chair next to him. Chu Xian felt a chill run down his spine. He silently cursed the guards and sentries outside for being blind. But when he took a closer look and realized that this person was a little familiar, a smile appeared on his face. So it's old Mr. Liu. Mr. really comes and goes like a shadow. I remember that Mr. said that you had something important to do. Why are you looking for me again? Leng Shiqi chuckled and said, "Isn't Castellan Chu asking the obvious?" I don't understand. At this time, Leng Shiqi didn't want to waste his breath on Chu Xian. He opened his palm and there was a light blue rectangular transparent crystal. Then he injected his spiritual power into it and the crystal disappeared. Then, 6 light blue curtains sealed the room from top to bottom. It was as if they were trapped inside the crystal. This was the intermediate level prize, a one-time consumable, the Forbidden Barrier. Not only could this barrier trap people, but it could also isolate all sounds, vibrations, and even spiritual energy fluctuations from the outside. The reason Leng Shiqi didn't choose to suddenly attack was because he wanted to set up a barrier first to avoid alerting the city guards outside. When Chu Xian saw the barrier, his eyes immediately revealed a look of horror. He immediately shouted, "Guards!" However, there was no movement outside at all. Chu Xian's expression couldn't help but become gloomy. He didn't expect Leng Shiqi to have such a method. Without the city guards, he could only face Leng Shiqi alone. Leng Shiqi didn't want to give him time to think. The moment he set up the barrier, he pulled out 2 scimitars and attacked. Chu Xian let out a cold snort. His robe fluttered and a powerful aura suddenly erupted. It directly overturned the table before him. His cultivation was actually at the 9th level of the spirit transformation realm. The table flew out and smashed towards Leng Shiqi, who was rushing over. 9th level of the spirit transformation realm. The information clearly said that Chu Xian was at the 6th level of the spirit transformation realm, but he was still hiding his strength. Leng Shiqi was surprised, but he still slashed out with his scimitars. With a bang sound, the table was smashed into wood chips in the blink of an eye. Leng Shiqi's figure didn't stop at all. A purple light bloomed on the twin sabers. Chu Xian's eyes widened. He knew that Leng Shiqi's scimitar technique was amazing, so he had to make the first move. He reached out his hands and golden light appeared on his palms. Then he suddenly slapped out. 2 abnormally powerful golden palms held out. Leng Shiqi slashed out with his scimitars. His 2 scimitars collided with the golden palms and he felt as if his scimitars had hit 2 pieces of metal. He couldn't help but take a few steps back. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi's heart couldn't help but tremble. It has to be said that his Gale Slash was at the peak of the spirit transformation realm and his scimitars were level 4 spirit artifacts. Even in this situation, he still couldn't beat Chu Xian. More importantly, Chu Xian was able to create palms? Leng Shiqi thought. Spirit Qi leaving the body is the sign of the spirit pulse realm of the sky realm. This Chu Xian is a spirit pulse realm expert? No, his aura is clearly at the spirit transformation realm, but I understand, he is at the peak of the spirit transformation realm. Although there was only one realm between the spirit transformation realm and the spirit pulse realm, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. There were 2 conditions to break through to the spirit pulse realm. One was to compress the Qi Sea in the body into a spirit sea. In addition, One had to open up one of the 72 spirit veins in the body. Chu Exin Ran's spirit force was already at the point where his Qi Si and Spirit Si merged. Generally speaking, as long as someone like this cultivated steadily, there was a high chance that they could break through to the spirit pulse realm. From then on, they would be reborn, live longer, shed their mortal body, and step into the sky realm of the sky realm. Chu Exin Ran forced Leng Shiqi back with one move and laughed heartily. Ha, ignorant. What do you think this Chu is relying on? It's not those small tricks, but my strength. You dare to kill me with just you? Immediately after, Chu Exin Ran once again sent out 2 palms. 2 golden palms even more powerful than before flew toward Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi didn't dare to meet them head-on this time and chose to dodge. A black mist rose from under his feet and he dodged the golden palms like a feather. The palms slammed into the bookshelves behind Leng Shiqi. The bookshelves and books instantly turned into dust. Didn't you want to kill me? This Chu is standing right here. Come and kill me. Chu Exin Ran's palms flashed with a golden light as he shouted. Leng Shiqi seemed to be angered by Chu Exin Ran's words. He raised his 2 blades and charged straight at Chu Exin Ran. Chu Exin Ran saw this and laughed in his heart. Just as he was about to attack, Leng Shiqi's figure suddenly turned into 12 illusions and the blades in his hands turned into swords. Chapter 149. When Leng Shiqi rushed over, he used the system space to change his blade into a sword. His entire body entered a strange state in an instant. His body moved and turned into 12 phantoms. Each of the phantoms had a different movement. Some charged forward, some attacked from the side, some jumped high, some slid on the ground, some stabbed out with invisible sword chi, and some stabbed out with light blue sword chi. What was even more strange was that although these illusions looked slow, they all stabbed towards Chu Exin Ran in the blink of an eye. Chaotic Blossom's dazzling eyes. This was a move that Leng Shiqi had used with his cultivation at the 5th level of the spirit transformation realm. It was a combination of the ethereal steps, the impacting meridian sword energy, and the cold frost sword energy, dazzling flowers. As the saying goes, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. Chu Exin Ran was at a loss of what to do in the face of 12 phantoms. He couldn't tell which one was Leng Shiqi's real body, or rather, all of them were real bodies. The smile on his face disappeared and turned into shock. He couldn't believe that such an exquisite spirit technique was mastered by a mere spirit transformation realm cultivator. However, he didn't have the time to think about it. He could only clench his teeth and send out 4 golden palms. Wherever the palms passed, the illusions and sword chi were scattered. However, there were still 4 illusions that came to his side. At this critical moment, Chu Exin Ran lowered his body and dodged the sword. His body suddenly spun and a faint golden light surrounded him in an attempt to block the remaining 3 illusions. Unfortunately, Leng Shiqi's 3 phantoms were extremely agile, and with the help of Byakugan, they quickly found Chu Exin Ran's weakness. 3 streaks of sword chi pierced Chu Exin Ran's ribs, waist, and legs respectively. The sword chi tore open 3 bloody wounds. 2 of the channel-opening sword chi and 1 of the frost sword chi entered his body and blocked his meridians and froze his flesh. Chu Exin Ran was extremely shocked. He immediately used his spirit energy to disperse the sword chi. However, the 3 sword chi were like maggots that were difficult to get rid of in a short period of time. The key was that he didn't have that much time to get rid of the sword chi because Leng Shiqi turned around and sent out another sword strike, aiming straight for Chu Exin Ran's throat. At this time, Chu Exin Ran could only suppress the 3 sword chi to prevent them from spreading. Then he stomped his feet on the ground and used the force to quickly retreat. Leng Shiqi's sword pierced through the air. He flicked his wrist and 3 frost sword chi flew out. Soon after, he pointed his spear, aiming at Chu Exin Ran's throat. With a low roar, his entire body surged with an unparalleled domineering aura. Then, he straightened his spear and charged over like a sharp sword. Halfway through, the tip of the spear flashed and a huge cross-shaped light suddenly shot out. At this time, Chu Xinran had just smashed the 3 frosty sword cheese and saw Leng Shiqi's fierce move. It was too late for him to dodge. At this moment, a trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. But he immediately stuck his tongue out and swallowed a small pill hidden in his teeth. After swallowing the pill, Chu Xinran's aura suddenly skyrocketed. The robe on his upper body flew off, and a crystal-clear meridian could be vaguely seen on his right arm. That was the spiritual vein. At this moment, Chu Xinran had actually used the power of the pill to forcefully open half of his spirit meridian. However, he was still not in the spirit meridian realm. At most, he was half a step into the spirit meridian realm. Originally, as long as Chu Xinran was given 1 or 2 more years, he could naturally break through, but now that he was facing a life and death crisis, he had no choice but to forcibly increase his strength. However, this was equivalent to destroying his own future. For someone like him, who used external items to forcefully open a spirit vein, even after breaking through to the spirit vein stage, it would be difficult for him to progress. He would probably die of old age at this stage. Thinking of this, Chu Xinran's face was filled with hatred and madness. Originally, he had come to Upper Yang City to give himself a chance to show off. According to his original plan, as long as he pacified the city guards and dealt with the 3 Blades gang, he could go into seclusion to cultivate. As long as he broke through to the Spirit Pulse realm, Upper Yang City would be in his hands. After that, he would be able to conspire for another major event. However, his plans had been completely disrupted today, and he had even lost his cultivation future. He was filled with hatred. He wanted to kill Leng Shiqi. Chu Xinran pushed out his right palm, and a golden palm shadow that was 3 times larger than before shot out, meeting Leng Shiqi's formation-breaking cross spear. The cross light at the tip of the spear collided with the golden palm shadow, and an explosion occurred, causing the entire barrier to tremble slightly. The white light and the golden palm shadow reflected off each other, and in the end, both gradually dissipated. Neither could do anything to the other, but Leng Shiqi's 3-section spear had a few more cracks. At the same time, his expression was not good. He had used 2 killing moves, Chaotic Blossom gradually mesmerizing eyes and formation-breaking cross spear, but they were still unable to do anything to Chu Xinran. Is this the strength of an orthodox spirit cultivator, a half-step spirit vein stage spirit cultivator? However, Leng Shiqi immediately sensed that half of the spirit vein on Chu Xinran's right arm had dimmed a lot. It was obvious that the palm strike had consumed a lot of his energy. Just as Leng Shiqi was about to attack again, Chu Xinran made a move first. A golden light flashed behind him, and he actually passed through the golden ripples and instantly appeared beside Leng Shiqi, sending out another fierce palm strike. At this moment, Leng Shiqi's hair stood on end. He did not expect Chu Xinran's speed to be so fast. Leng Shiqi immediately moved his spirit energy, and the patterns on his back and abdomen suddenly lit up. Then a gold and silver light flashed, and his body suddenly expanded. A layer of thin silver armor covered his body. He had activated 2 Beast Origin battle patterns at this moment. His aura exploded. However, Chu Xinran's golden palm shadow had already arrived with boundless strength. Facing this abnormally ferocious palm strike, the force of the palm pierced his face, causing him to feel a faint pain. At this moment, he was instead extremely calm. Suddenly, a flash of understanding appeared in his mind, and he unexpectedly followed up with a palm strike. When the palm struck out, it instantly turned into 6 palm shadows, and within the palm shadows, there was a bit of fire. Then, the 6 palm shadows suddenly merged into one. Leng Shiqi's palm also ignited a faint flame and blasted against the golden palm shadow. Boom, boom, boom. The 2 palms collided, and suddenly a violent force was set off. With the 2 of them as the center, the tiles and furniture in the entire room were all blasted out and smashed into the barrier. There was no place in the entire room that was intact. Leng Shiqi's body was blasted out and slammed into the barrier. The thin armor on his right arm was completely broken, and traces of blood seeped out. His arm was a little twisted, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. Obviously, he was seriously injured. As for Chu Xinran, he was not in a good state either. The spirit vein on his arm had disappeared, and his entire arm was charred black as if it had been burned. And if one could see inside his arm, they would be even more surprised to find that the meridians, bones, and flesh had already been corroded to a terrible state. This was the 6-yang poison fire palm that Leng Shiqi had fused with the 6-yang palm and the poison fire palm at the critical moment. Chapter 150. The 6-yang poisonous fire palm had completely crippled Chu Xinran's right arm. It was his strongest right arm after unlocking his spirit vein. Chu Xinran had already begun to lose confidence. After using all his trump cards, he was the one who was injured even more. At this point, he began to seriously doubt the identity of his opponent. Leng Shiqi's cultivation level was not very high, but his spirit force was pure and his foundation was deep. Not only was his blade technique amazing, but his sword technique, spear technique, and palm technique were all stronger than the last. How could such a person be just a small assassin in black? However, what happened next shocked him even more. Leng Shiqi's left hand flashed with starlight and a circular formation appeared before him. A huge sword tip with a shocking cold aura appeared from it. The cold aura overflowed, causing Chu Xinran's limbs to stiffen. Then the sword tip suddenly shot out and pierced his heart. It was Spirit Attack, Ice Giant Sword. Chu Xinran spat out several mouthfuls of scarlet blood. He stared at Leng Shiqi with eyes filled with disbelief. He muttered, "Impossible," however, before he could finish his sentence, he fell to the ground and died. Seeing that Chu Xinran was finally dead, Leng Shiqi immediately gasped for breath. Although he had activated 2 beast origin battle patterns in this battle, he had still suffered heavy injuries. Moreover, the consumption of spirit force was extremely large. In particular, the newly comprehended 6-yang poisonous fire palm had consumed more than 30% of his spirit force. At the same time, he had used this battle to fuse another move, which was a pleasant surprise. He had discovered that the higher the intensity of the battle, the faster his comprehension of spirit techniques would be. Then Leng Shiqi looked around. The forbidden boundary was still there, so he did not have to worry about being noticed. Then he swallowed a few pills and began to search Chu Xinran's body. Unexpectedly, he found a mustard seed bag. Chu Xinran was only at the spirit transformation realm. Even though he was the lord of a city, Shangyang City was only a small remote city. Logically speaking, he should not have something as precious as a mustard seed bag. But since there was, it showed that Chu Xinran's identity was not that simple. Leng Shiqi didn't care about this. His face lit up as he hurriedly opened it. First of all, the space in this mustard seed bag was half as small as his, and there were very few things inside. There were only a few dozen spirit stones and some ordinary medicinal pills. The rest were Chu Xinran's personal belongings. It could be said that the harvest was meager. This was a little too shabby. However, Leng Shiqi thought about how Chu Xinran emptied the treasury of the city lord's mansion. Chu Xinran might have even lost his own fortune. But what's this? Leng Shiqi suddenly saw 2 strange things in the mustard seed bag. One of them was a dark blue round plate that was half the size of a palm. One side of the plate was engraved with the 9 heavens profound thunder, while the other side was engraved with the word dark. He didn't understand what it meant, but he could roughly guess that it was a symbol of status. The other was a tattered map with the words Tomb of XX vaguely written on it. Leng Shiqi glanced at it a few times before throwing it into the mustard seed bag. Finally, he burned Chu Xinran's body with fire, erased all traces, removed the forbidden boundary, and left the city lord's mansion from underground. The next morning, Leng Shiqi appeared on the street. His face was slightly pale as he ate some breakfast at a roadside stall. Then he bought a horse and walked towards the city gate. However, when he arrived at the city gate, he stopped. It wasn't because someone stopped him, but because he found a strange symbol in the corner of the city gate. It was the secret sign of the Blood Garment Pavilion, which meant that there was an important matter. Is this the sign Mao Kai left for me? Or is there someone else in Shangyang City? Forget it, I'll go find him first. It won't take much time anyway. Leng Shiqi thought to himself. Then he turned back and walked towards the coffin shop. When Mao Kai saw Leng Shiqi again, he immediately shouted in surprise, "Emissary, you're not dead." Leng Shiqi's face sank when he heard this. Seeing Leng Shiqi's unfriendly expression, Mao Kai smiled awkwardly and said, "Emissary, please don't assassinate Chu Xinran. I just received an urgent secret report last night. Chu Xinran's cultivation. It's the peak of the spirit transformation realm." Leng Shiqi finished Mao Kai's sentence. Mao Kai was startled for a moment, then his eyes and mouth slowly widened. His lips trembled as he said, "Emissary, how did you know? Could it be that you've already—" At this point, Mao Kai made a throat-slitting gesture. Leng Shiqi didn't say anything and only nodded. He didn't deliberately hide it from Mao Kai. After all, he had taken the information on Chu Xinran from Mao Kai, and the news of Chu Xinran's death would probably spread soon. Mao Kai sucked in a breath of cold air when he heard this. That's the peak of the spirit transformation realm. And his identity is extraordinary. Did he really die? In truth, there was something Mao Kai didn't say out loud. Leng Shiqi's cultivation was only at the 5th layer of the spirit transformation realm. How could he kill Chu Xinran, who was at the peak of the spirit transformation realm, and assassinate him in the city lord's mansion? The city guards hadn't even discovered it yet. How did he do it? Of course, Mao Kai didn't ask too much. He knew that trouble comes from the mouth. Leng Shiqi said indifferently, "The news should spread soon. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first." Although he had killed Chu Xinran, he was still injured. He wanted to return to the pavilion to recuperate. However, he didn't expect Mao Kai to stop him and say, "Emissary, please wait. There's something you might not know." Leng Shiqi stopped and asked in confusion, What is it?" Mao Kai leaned over and whispered, "That Chu Xinran's identity is not simple. He is the Dark Thunder Guard of the Thunderfire dynasty." Dark Thunder Guard? When Leng Shiqi heard this, he immediately thought of the token with the thunder pattern engraved on it. Mao Kai explained, "Emissary, you might not know this, but the Dark Thunder Guard belongs to the Thunderfire dynasty's royal family. They are responsible for dealing with shameful matters. Moreover, they have great authority. They can monitor the royal family and investigate the officials and commoners. Those who can enter the Dark Thunder Guard are all elites among elites. Chu Xinran is one of them." Leng Shiqi nodded. "So that's how it is. That Chu Xinran is indeed extraordinary." Mao Kai continued, "Emissary, you killed a member of the Dark Thunder Guard. The higher-ups will definitely send people to investigate. If there are any clues left behind, I'm afraid they will quickly find you." At this moment, Leng Shiqi was a bit glad that he had destroyed all the traces, so he said, "I erased the traces of the fight. They shouldn't be able to find anything." Mao Kai heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. If he was really found out, he might also be found out by following the vine to the melon. With that, Leng Shiqi left. Chapter 151. At this moment, in the city lord's mansion, a large group of people were walking back and forth in front of Chu Xinran's room with anxious expressions. Why hasn't the city lord come out yet? After the battle between the Chinko Hall and the Three Sabers Association, there are still a lot of messes to clean up. We have to wait for the city lord to make a decision. Did something happen? Why don't we go in and take a look? That's not very good. We're all doing this for Shangyang City. I don't think the city lord will blame us. All right. Everyone pushed open the door, but what they saw was a mess. Everything that could be seen was shattered into pieces and squashed against the wall. Only half of a charred corpse was left in the room. They turned pale with fright and looked at each other. They knew that something bad had happened. And the culprit of this matter, Leng Shiqi, had already urged his horse out of the city and rushed back to the Wind Ridge. The city lord's death could not be hidden. After all, so many people and guards had seen it. The city lord's mansion was originally a plate of loose sand, so the news quickly spread. When the news of Chu Xinran's death came out, the entire city was in an uproar. Whether it was the ordinary residents or the spirit cultivators, they were all a little uneasy. The destruction of the Three Sabers Association 2 days ago had made many people realize that Shangyang City was about to change. But only a day had passed, and the new city lord, Chu Xinran, was also dead. Such a huge change made many people feel uneasy, causing the already desolate Shangyang City to become even more lifeless. However, as the saying goes, some people are happy while others are sad. And vice versa. There was one person in the city who was very happy, and that was the hall master of the Chinko Hall, Go Huarong. He and Chu Xinran had joined hands to exterminate the Three Sabers Association, and Chu Xinran died the next day. This was equivalent to giving the entire Shangyang city to him. Of course, there were also many people who guessed that it was Go Huarong who killed Chu Xinran, but he did not care about that. He directly sent out all his gang members, and in just a day he occupied more than half of the streets in the city. Vaguely, he was about to become the overlord of Shangyang City. Even until late at night, the city lord's mansion was still brightly lit. There was an endless stream of people coming and going inside, but everyone's faces were filled with worry. There was an atmosphere of panic that enveloped the entire city lord's mansion. In the room where Leng Shiqi and Chu Xinran were fighting, an old man with a goatee was pacing around with bright eyes. He seemed to be observing every detail in the room, fearing that he would miss out on even the slightest clue. This man was the famous coroner master in Donglin County, Zhuang Qingping. He had solved countless strange cases for Donglin County. It was even rumored that he could tell the cause of death, the time of death, how many people he had killed, what kind of weapon he had used, and even what kind of spiritual technique he had used just by looking at a corpse. Until now, he had never made a wrong judgment. He could be said to be an eccentric. Coincidentally, Zhuang Qingping happened to be passing by Upper Sun City. When he heard that the city lord Chu Xinran had died mysteriously, he took the initiative to show himself. The people in the city lord's mansion didn't know how Chu Xinran had died, so they couldn't report to their superiors. When they learned that Zhuang Qingping was here, they welcomed him as if he had caught a life-saving straw. After a long while, the old man squatted in front of the charred corpse that had been burned to the point where it no longer had a human shape. His hands suddenly emitted a faint layer of spiritual light, as if he had put on a pair of thin gloves. He began to carefully examine Chu Xinran's corpse, which only had half of a charred corpse left. The more he examined, the more he frowned. He waved his hand, and then a very stout man next to him bowed and said, "Lord Zhuang, what can I do for you?" This man's name was Zhong Qi, and he was Chu Xinran's deputy. He helped him deal with the affairs of the city lord's mansion. Now that Chu Xinran was dead, many troubles fell on his head. Zhuang Qingping asked, "Let me ask you, did no one hear anything last night?" Zhong Qi answered seriously, "Lord Zhuang, according to the report of the guards in the mansion, there was no sound in the room last night." Zhuang Qingping was surprised and said, "That's strange. From the degree of destruction in the room, the spiritual energy fluctuations should be comparable to a spirit cultivator at the peak of the spirit transformation realm. How could no one notice such a big commotion? And from the traces, someone used an extremely powerful spear technique. Other than that, City Lord Chu's body also had sword wounds and traces of scarlet poison palm force entering his body. However, the fatal injury that caused City Lord Chu's death came from a powerful ice spirit technique. His body was set on fire after his death. The more Zhong Qi listened, the more shocked he became. His eyelids twitched as he said, "Lord Zhuang means that there were 4 people who avoided all the guards and hidden sentries last night. At the same time, they sneaked into the City Lord's mansion to assassinate City Lord Chu. There was even a spirit cultivator among them." "That's right. But that's impossible." Zhong Qi still found it hard to believe. "Nothing is impossible. Originally, I was also curious as to why they could sneak in so easily without making any noise. It seems like this was the work of that spirit cultivator. Look, everything in this room is broken beyond recognition. Only the surrounding walls are undamaged. It must be that spirit caster who set up a restriction formation or something like that. The abilities of spirit cultivators have always been strange and unpredictable. There's no need to make a fuss over nothing. Zhongqi said, so it's like that. Then who does Lord Zhuang think the culprit is? Zhuang Chengping coldly snorted. To be able to take out such a large sum of money and send out 4 spirit transformation realm late-stage spirit cultivators, including a spirit cultivator to assassinate City Lord Chu. Such a person is definitely not someone you and I can provoke. Furthermore, if I'm not wrong, City Lord Chu's identity is probably not simple. Forget it, this old man is just passing by and does not want to meddle in other people's business. You just need to follow my instructions and report it. Don't worry about anything else. Zhongqi nodded his head and said, this official understands. Many thanks for Lord Zhuang's help. Leng Shiqi did not care about the changes in Shangyang City. He had already completed his mission and killed the enemy who schemed against him. Now, he did not have any lingering thoughts or interest in Shangyang City. He just wanted to quickly return to the pavilion and recuperate. It was also because of his injuries that his speed was slower. He did not return to the pavilion for an entire day. In the end, he could only sleep in the wilderness. However, he did not care. He directly sank into the ground out of habit. After casually eating and drinking, he began to cultivate and recuperate. However, not long after, he vaguely heard hurried footsteps coming from the ground. Leng Shiqi immediately opened his supercilious eyes and immediately saw several huge balls of spirit qi. Among them, the weakest was more than 10 times his spirit qi. One of them had an enormous spirit qi that could be said to be terrifying. Leng Shiqi was shocked. Although he did not know the specific cultivation level of these people, there was no doubt that they were experts of the 4 realms of heaven. Why would so many experts of the 4 realms of heaven suddenly come to such a remote place? Chapter 152. The next morning, Leng Shiqi had already arrived near the Shady Wind Ridge. He selectively forgot about the spirit cultivators of the 4 realms of heaven and human that he had accidentally met last night. He didn't dare to have a curiosity that he shouldn't have. He drove the horse away and entered the Shady Wind Ridge alone. His speed was not slow as he stepped on the black fog. After a while, Leng Shiqi arrived at the entrance of the pavilion. However, he saw dozens of people gathered there from a distance. He could feel the strong smell of gunpowder even from so far away. Leng Shiqi frowned. Is someone here to cause trouble for the Blood Robe Pavilion? This is the Blood Robe Pavilion, one of the 7 top sects in the world. Even if it's just a branch, it's not something that ordinary sects can afford to offend. Then, he hid his figure and quietly went around from the side. He did not expect to find a familiar figure behind a big rock. That person was Fan Jingchu, who had brought him to the Donglin County branch. At this time, Fan Jingchu was looking in the direction of the entrance of the branch. Suddenly, someone patted him on the shoulder. Fan Jingchu was immediately startled. He pulled out a dagger from somewhere and was about to stab. However, when he saw that the person was Leng Shiqi, he immediately stopped and let out a sigh of relief. He said in a low voice, "Junior brother Leng, it's you. You almost accidentally injured yourself without making a sound. By the way, you just came back from a mission, right?" "That's right." Leng Shiqi nodded. He then asked, "Senior brother Fan, what happened in the pavilion? Who are those people?" Fan Jingchu said with a serious expression, "They're from the Tang family." The Tang family? Leng Shiqi recalled the distribution of forces in Donglin County. Speaking of the forces in Donglin County, the Mountain Sea sect, one of the 9 major sects, was naturally the dominant one. Even the Thunder Flame dynasty was suppressed. However, the area of Donglin County was not small. The Mountain Sea sect was built in the vicinity of the sea. Of course, other forces would be born in the remaining large area. Sects like the Blood Robe Pavilion and the Mountain Sea sect that could be ranked on the world sect ranking were considered the top forces. The sects below them were divided into 3 levels. From bottom to top, there were third-rate forces, second-rate forces, and first-rate forces. Experts who were able to cultivate to the spirit aperture realm had the qualifications to establish their own sect, and the forces established by people of this realm were generally third-rate forces. The Heavenly Cloud Tower, where the 4 spiritual guards belonged, was a third-rate sect. In Donglin County, there were dozens of third-rate forces, and there were only about 10 second-rate forces. As for first-rate forces, there were only 2, and the Tang family was one of them. The Tang clan was a great clan that had risen in recent decades. Their clan leader, Tang Haoquang, was a great expert at the unity of heaven and man realm. But why did they come here? Leng Shiqi asked in confusion, "What is the Tang family doing in our branch?" "Brother Leng, there's something you don't know, but this matter is very satisfying." Fan Jingchu raised his eyebrows and said, "The Tang clan's reputation in Donglin County can be said to be second only to the Mountain Sea sect. The biggest reason is that the Tang clan has a genius called Tang Hiu. This person broke through to the spiritual pulse realm at the age of 24, which shocked the whole Donglin County and even overshadowed the disciples of the Mountain Sea sect. There are even rumors that the Tang clan may become one of the 10 aristocratic families in the world sect ranking list because of Tang Hiu." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi knew that Fan Jingchu had not gotten to the point, but he was not in a hurry. He even cooperated and asked, "Tang Hiu is really worthy of the title of genius. Then what happened?" Fan Jingchu curled the corner of his mouth and said coldly, "Then just a few days ago, Tang Hiu was killed." "He was killed? Such a great genius was killed?" Leng Shiqi's mind raced. Combined with the appearance of the Tang clan here, he instantly thought of a possibility. Tang Hiu was probably killed by the Blood Robe Pavilion. Fan Jingchu continued in a proud tone, "Junior brother Leng should have guessed it. Yes, Tang Hiu was killed by a disciple of our sect. The person who carried out this task is called Bing Shang. He can be said to be a genius disciple of our Donglin County branch. He is definitely not more than 30 years old and has just broken through to the spiritual pulse realm not long ago. In terms of cultivation speed, he may not be as fast as Tang Hiu, but in terms of combat effectiveness, the result is obvious." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi also understood the ins and outs of the matter. Bing Shang, a killer of the Donglin County branch, killed the genius of the Tang clan, Tang Hiu, so the Tang clan came to settle the score. However, Leng Shiqi had another question. He asked, "Our Blood Robe Pavilion is only responsible for carrying out tasks. Even if the Tang clan wants to take revenge and make trouble, they should not come to us. Besides, the Tang clan does not have the strength to challenge the Blood Robe Pavilion." Fan Jingchu snorted coldly and said, "As everyone knows, we only do things for money and do not have any grudges. But after all, this is Donglin County, which is too far from the general pavilion, and the Tang clan is a local tyrant, so they shamelessly asked for the information of the employer. The one who came was Tang Haoqing, the elder of the Tang clan and also Tang Hiu's father. He was in the gang spirit realm and brought many masters of the celestial being realm to suppress the situation. But as the employer of the killer force, the information of our sect must not be leaked. This is the root of the problem, so they began to negotiate there. After figuring all this out, Leng Shiqi somewhat despised the Tang clan's behavior. They did not have the ability to find out the mastermind behind, so they came to make trouble for the Blood Robe Pavilion? But suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. Tang Haoqing and his gang could not be those people he met last night, could they? Leng Shiqi secretly estimated that the possibility was great. Masters of the celestial being realm were not cabbages on the roadside. They were probably these people. At this time, Fan Jingchu suddenly said, "Hey, there seems to be a quarrel over there." Leng Shiqi looked up and saw that the two leaders of the Blood Robe Pavilion and the Tang clan began to quarrel loudly. It seemed that the negotiation had failed. The leader of the Blood Robe Pavilion was Gui Ju, the leader of the Blood Robe Pavilion. He was saying in a low voice, "Tang Haoqing, your Tang clan is so powerful. Today, you have already broken the rules of our pavilion by coming here. You want the information of the employer? Dream on." Tang Haoqing, the elder of the Tang clan, was already as black as the bottom of a pot. He immediately said angrily, "I have already said that the Tang clan will pay whatever price you want. Don't you make money by assassination? Now I will pay you more." Tell me who wants to kill Tang Hiu. No comment. Gui Ju said firmly. Tang Haoqing's face was as dark as water. He said through gritted teeth, don't forget that this is Donglin County. Gui Ju's attitude was even tougher. He snorted and said, don't forget that standing in front of you is the Blood Robe Pavilion, one of the 7 unique in the world. Chapter 153. Ghost Ju and Tang Haoqing did not budge an inch and faintly emitted their own spiritual pressure. However, their expressions were very different. Ghost Ju's face was somewhat calm because he knew that Tang Haoqing would never dare to attack the Blood Cloak Pavilion unless he was crazy. Tang Haoqing's face was more resentful and humiliated. In fact, he had secretly come this time behind the family head's back because Tang Hiu was his son. He knew that the family head would definitely not let him come to the Blood Cloak Pavilion branch, so he could only secretly bring people here. Originally, he wanted to use the power of the Tang family and the high reward to persuade Ghost Ju, but he did not expect Ghost Ju to be so unreasonable. In the face of this situation, he had no other choice. He knew very well that he could not do anything. Once he did, it would be equivalent to completely provoking the Blood Cloak Pavilion. His own son had been killed, but he did not even know the real murderer. An indescribable and nameless fire burned in his body, causing him extreme pain. On the other side, Leng Shiqi and Fan Jingchu were still whispering to each other. Leng Shiqi said, Senior brother Fan, do you think they will fight? Even if the Tang family had 10 times the courage, they would not dare to do anything. Do you know? Fan Jingchu said this and stepped on something, making a crisp sound. The sound was very soft, but Tang Haoqing was sharp enough to catch it. He was about to explode, so he immediately turned his head and shouted, Where did this rat come from? That Tang Haoqing angrily punched out, and a visible red fist with blazing flames suddenly lit up the night sky, illuminating the surroundings as if it was daytime. The flames swept over with a terrifying temperature, and everything in their path was turned into ashes. The target of the flames was where Leng Shiqi and Fan Jingchu were. The flames appeared too suddenly and came very quickly. They could feel the blazing aura from afar, as if they had been thrown into a sea of fire. Leng Shiqi was horrified. He didn't know why Tang Haoqing would suddenly attack him, but he knew that if he didn't run now, there would be nothing left of him. He hurriedly circulated his spiritual energy, and his body suddenly grew taller. His whole body bulged with sturdy muscles, directly bursting his black clothes and mask. At the same time, a silver-white brilliance enveloped him, covering him with a thin layer of silver armor. Double Beast Origin Battle Pattern. After activating the Spiritual Ruin Beast King and the Silver Scale Fire Armored Crocodile's Beast Essence battle patterns, the Leng Shiqi's strength and defense greatly increased. However, the ferocious flames also began to rush over. Leng Shiqi quickly used Ghost Parade and dodged to the side using Spirit Steps. This series of changes happened in an instant. Leng Shiqi quickly flashed out, but Fan Jingchu was a beat slower. The raging flames suddenly swallowed the big rock and Fan Jingchu. It was as if a giant flame beast had swallowed him completely. He didn't even have a chance to scream before there was nothing left of him. Although Leng Shiqi wasn't hit head-on, just a little bit of the aftershock was enough to scorch the thin silver armor on his back. Bursts of intense pain instantly spread throughout his body. What was even more terrifying was that the flames exploded after swallowing Fan Jingchu. Leng Shiqi was in the range of the explosion. He was horrified. He raised his right hand and 5 earth walls appeared in front of him. Immediately, his left hand flashed and emitted a dense cold air that covered the earth walls. The 5 earth walls instantly turned into 5 ice walls. Leng Shiqi continued to turn and run. Every few steps he ran, he would erect an earth wall behind him. At this time, the scattered flames smashed down. When they touched the ice walls, they immediately caused a sizzling sound. The 5 ice walls didn't even last a second before they turned into a pool of mud. The fire continued to spread, and the earthen walls that Leng Shiqi had set up were all shattered like paper. From beginning to end, it had only bought him less than 2 breaths of time. However, It was these 2 seconds that allowed Lung Shiqi to hide in the dense forest next to him. Unfortunately, a ball of fire still hit his back. Pooh! Lung Shiqi immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. The fire burned the thin armor on his body. The thin armor was actually transformed from his skin. This was equivalent to burning his skin and flesh. In addition, a majestic blazing aura poured into his body, constantly destroying his meridians and internal organs. Even though Lung Shiqi's body was strong and he had activated 2 Beast Yuan battle tattoos, he still couldn't bear it. He could only quickly burrow into the ground. He didn't dare to stay for a moment. He went more than 100 feet underground before stopping. He hurriedly swallowed a few elixirs to restore his chi, blood, and spiritual power, and then began to suppress the extremely violent blazing aura in his body. At the door of the pavilion, Ghost Ju was secretly surprised when he saw Tang Haoqing suddenly attack. He had long noticed that there were 2 people hiding nearby. He had always thought that they were the Tang family's secret sentries or passers-by. If they were from the Blood Cloak Pavilion, they would have come directly. There was no need to hide. But in fact, they were really from the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Coincidentally, Fan Jingchu and Lung Shiqi had just returned from a mission. Lung Shiqi didn't know much about Donglin County, so he asked a few more questions. Who would have thought that he would bring disaster upon himself? Under Tang Haoqing's fire, Fan Jingchu's face was turned to ashes before he could even see it. But when Ghost Ju saw Lung Shiqi's face, his eyes suddenly widened. Lung Shiqi? Why was Lung Shiqi there? In this pavilion, anyone could die, except for Lung Shiqi. When Ghost Ju saw Lung Shiqi was hit by the fire, his chi and blood surged, and his horrible spiritual power at the peak of Gang Spirit Realm broke out. Dozens of people in front and behind, except for Tang Haoqing, were all shaken out. At this moment, there were gusts of chilly wind around Ghost Ju, and his blood-red robe was rustling in the wind. He stared at Tang Haoqing, revealing an amazing murderous intent. Seeing this, Tang Haoqing's face turned a little pale. Although he was in the same realm as Ghost Ju now, Ghost Ju used to be one of the 9 famous ghost blood cloak killers, a great master in the realm of oneness of heaven and men. Now his cultivation realm had fallen, but his fighting experience and means were far beyond Tang Haoqing's. Ghost Ju raised his arms, and the chilly wind around him suddenly spread out. Suddenly, a strong chilly wind blew in a radius of hundreds of feet, and the sound of ghosts crying could be faintly heard. Seeing this, Tang Haoqing's face finally changed. He shouted, "Ghost Ju, you're serious? Go to hell." Ghost Execution let out a low roar. Ghost energy surged out from his body, and in the blink of an eye, the ghost energy turned into fierce ghosts that circled in the air. In less than 2 breaths of time, over 100 fierce ghosts had appeared. Tang Haoqing stomped on the ground with 1 foot and clenched his fists in front of him. Then he smashed his fists on the ground with a muffled shout. Suddenly, the fist spirit burst out, and a huge column of fire shot up from the ground, shining in all directions. He spread his arms, and the column of fire covered his whole body, so that the ferocious ghosts could not get close to him. Ghost Ju smiled coldly, and his body was changing strangely. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a ferocious ghost that was 10 feet high. His 2 ghost claws moved, and instantly tore the column of fire apart. Then the ghosts rushed to Tang Haoqing, howling. Chapter 154. Lung Shiqi, who was hiding deep underground, was about to suppress the fire in his body when the ground suddenly shook. Then he heard the sound of hundreds of ghosts crying and flames exploding above him. What was even more terrifying was that 2 powerful spirit force fluctuations suddenly appeared, causing him to spit out another mouthful of blood. "There's a fight above? We can't stay here." Lung Shiqi was shocked again and quickly ran away. Otherwise, he would only get more injured. It wasn't until he was several miles away that he could no longer feel the 2 spirit force fluctuations. Only then did he feel relieved. At the same time, he secretly cursed his bad luck. He and Fan Jingchu didn't do anything, yet they were inexplicably attacked. Fan Jingchu died on the spot, and he was seriously injured. Leng Shiqi checked his injuries. He was already injured in the battle with Chu Xinran, and now his body's condition was even worse. His entire back was charred black, and there were even a few hideous bloody wounds. It looked a bit too horrible to look at. But the more serious injuries were his internal injuries. Tang Haoqing's flame was a little strange. It was not a simple flame, but more like it was derived from some kind of fist technique. This was because Leng Shiqi could clearly feel that the residual flame in his body still contained bursts of fist force. The flames and fist energy had destroyed most of the meridians in his back. If it wasn't for the fact that he cultivated a body refining technique, his body would be much stronger than ordinary people. He would have died on the spot. Then Leng Shiqi used all his spirit force to suppress the flames and fist energy. After an entire day, he finally suppressed them. This was only suppression. He hadn't completely forced them out of his body. Fortunately, it was only a matter of time. At this point, Leng Shiqi let out a breath and wiped the dense sweat on his face. Then his eyes flashed with hatred and a desire for strength. He hated Tang Haoqing, but he also yearned for that kind of strength. Tang Haoqing only threw a punch from afar. Just a little bit of the aftershock and residual flames touched Leng Shiqi, and he was seriously injured. How powerful was that? However, Leng Shiqi knew his limits. What he needed to do now was not to hate or desire, but to heal his wounds. He returned to the ground and looked up to identify the terrain. I remember there's a small town nearby. Let's go there and rest for a few days. Sinzu Town was an ordinary town near Shangyang City. After Leng Shiqi arrived at Sinzu Town, he found an inn and shut himself in, slowly recovering from his injuries. What he didn't know was that there were more and more outsiders coming to Sinzu Town these past few days. On the 10th day, he had almost used up all of his healing pills, and his injuries had finally improved by about 70 to 80%. However, he was in a very bad mood. For the past 10 days, he had only cared about recuperating from his injuries, so his cultivation had not improved at all. The path of cultivation was like rowing a boat against the current. If one did not advance, one would fall behind. These 10 days could be considered as a waste of time. He walked out of the room with a sullen face and prepared to pay the bill. Coincidentally, two people came to check out behind him, and they were whispering to each other. Leng Shiqi sensed that these two people were only in the pure spirit realm, and they looked to be in their 30s. They were obviously spirit cultivators with poor aptitudes. At first, he did not pay much attention to them, but by chance, he seemed to have heard the words City Lord's Mansion. His heart skipped a beat, and he channeled his spirit energy to his ears, quietly listening to their conversation. Brother Li, is the news reliable? Brother Wang, don't worry. I went out last night to inquire, and this news was released by Shangyang City's City Lord's Mansion. It can't be fake. But I remember that Marquis Buing died a few hundred years ago under the siege of the imperial court. Where did the tomb come from? Heh, those high and mighty people are all very powerful. How can we speculate about them? Since the City Lord's Mansion has released the news of finding Marquis Buyuan's tomb, why don't we try our luck? Who knows, maybe we'll find it. When the time comes, we'll definitely be rewarded. Fine, since I have nothing to do, I'll accompany Brother Li on this trip. Ah, good brother. At this time, Leng Shiqi also finished paying the bill. It was the two people's turn, and they stopped talking. Leng Shiqi thoughtfully walked out of the inn. As soon as he left the inn, he immediately noticed that there were many more people in the town than when he first came, and many of them seemed to be in a hurry. Could it be that they're all here for Marquis Buyuan's tomb? However, he was very unfamiliar with the words Marquis Buyuan, but he had seen the word tomb on a broken map not long ago. After that, Leng Shiqi bought a few books in town that recorded the history of Shangyang City. The Marquis Buyuan was a person who lived more than 300 years ago. At that time, Shangyang City was not as desolate as it was now. Although it was not very big, it was very famous, and the merchants that came and went were very dense. The most important reason was that Shangyang City had a Marquis Buyuan. It was said that Marquis Buyuan was born in an ordinary family in Shangyang City. Although he became a spirit cultivator, His cultivation talent was very ordinary. He was able to earn a position in the city guards, enough to support his family. Later, when the Thunderblaze dynasty and the newly proclaimed Northern Wei dynasty went to war, Marquis Buyuan resolutely joined the army. But he did not expect that from then on he would start a glorious life. Marquis Buyuan was not afraid of death on the battlefield, and he repeatedly performed miraculous deeds. His position was quickly promoted, and he was valued by the higher-ups. He was passed down a high-grade cultivation technique, and his cultivation began to advance by leaps and bounds. Finally, when the war ended, he used his illustrious achievements to rise from a common soldier to the title of Marquis Buyuan. It could be said that his future was limitless. However, what no one expected was that he actually gave up his military position and returned to Shangyang City with only the title of Marquis. It could be said that he gave up his great future. Many people found it hard to understand. Later on, something even more incomprehensible happened. About 20 years later, someone secretly reported that Marquis Buyuan was secretly preparing a large amount of money and weapons. It seemed that he was up to no good. The dynasty immediately sent people to investigate, and it turned out that it was true. The unparalleled Marquis Buyuan was actually up to no good, and the evidence was conclusive. Suddenly, the world was in an uproar. Not long after, the dynasty sent people to encircle Marquis Buyuan's residence, and Marquis Buyuan died in battle. From then on, Shangyang City was implicated and slowly declined. After reading this, Leng Shiqi felt that something was wrong, but he could not say what it was. After all, it was someone from more than 300 years ago. Who could know the truth? But at this time, he was a little hesitant. He now had two choices. One was to return to the Shadowwind Ridge to submit the mission and then cultivate for a while. In the past few days, he found that the bottleneck of the sixth layer of the spirit transformation realm had loosened. It would not be long before he could break through. The other choice was to go and see the so-called tomb of Marquis Buyuan. Maybe he could fish in troubled waters and fish for some benefits. After pondering for a while, Leng Shiqi made a decision. Chapter 155. Leng Shiqi decided to look for an opportunity. His mission only needed to be completed within a month. There was still half a month left, so he was not in a hurry. Moreover, after handing in the mission, he would still have to cultivate and carry out missions step by step. If this continued, when would he be able to break through to Celestial Realm for? Leng Shiqi did not forget the mission Wu Xiang gave him, which was to break through to the Spiritual Pulse Realm within a year. It was definitely impossible to do it just by cultivating hard. The news of Boiwanhu's tomb had attracted so many people, so it did not seem fake. This could be considered an opportunity. Moreover, it was near him. It would be a pity if he did not give it a try. Most importantly, he had been provoked by Tang Haoqing. At that time, Tang Haoqing had only casually thrown a light punch, but that little bit of aftershock had seriously injured Leng Shiqi. What kind of powerful strength was that? This also made Leng Shiqi deeply feel how weak he was. Even if he thought that his talent was extraordinary, his comprehension was high, and he had the system as a cheat, his potential could be said to be extremely high. However, potential was only potential, not strength. Therefore, Leng Shiqi was also very anxious to improve his strength, and Boiwanhu's tomb was an opportunity. His only concern was that it was a bit too much of a coincidence for such a thing to happen so soon after the change in Shangyang City. However, since the news came from Shangyang City, there would definitely be more accurate and detailed information in the city. Moreover, he had sources of information in the city. Half a day later, when Mao Kai saw Leng Shiqi appear, he was also a little surprised. He immediately asked, "Emissary, did you accept another mission near Shangyang City?" Leng Shiqi shook his head and said, "It's a long story. I came to you this time to ask for some information about Boiwanhu's tomb." "TSK, emissary, you want to get involved too?" Mao Kai showed a stunned expression at this time. Leng Shiqi frowned and said, "Can't I?" Mao Kai subconsciously said, "You really can't." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw that Leng Shiqi looked a little unhappy. he immediately explained, "Ambassador, you may not know the rules of our sect. All the disciples of the blood-clothed pavilion are not allowed to participate in the fight for natural treasures." Why is that? Leng Shiqi was really surprised this time. What kind of strange rule was this? Mao Kai explained, "Well, this is about the nature of our sect. The blood-robed pavilion was an assassin force, and countless people had died at their hands. He had even killed the disciples and elders on the world sect ranking. He had even killed the sect leader. In this world, there are as many forces that want to destroy our sect as there are hairs on an ox. Over the past 1,000 years, there have been countless forces that have risen and fallen. Why is our sect still able to exist and even be ranked as one of the 7 invincible sects? This is not only because our sect is strong, but also because we know our own situation and position. The blood-robed pavilion was actually a sword in the hands of all the sects in the world, a sword hidden in the darkness. Those things that could not be done openly were left to this sword to do. Therefore, even if the blood-robed pavilion was hated by countless people, no one mentioned that they wanted to destroy our sect because everyone needed this sword. Therefore, since the establishment of our sect, there has been a rule that we are not allowed to participate in any grudges or vendettas, nor are we allowed to fight for natural treasures, secret opportunities, and so on. Leng Shiqi quietly listened to Mao Kai's words and understood the reason behind it. He also agreed with the blood-robed pavilion's approach. Since the blood-robed pavilion was a sword in the hands of all the sects in the world, it could only be an honest sword. Therefore, the disciples of the blood-robed pavilion had to maintain absolute neutrality and only act according to the mission. They could not be mixed with any personal grudges. It was no wonder that when he wanted to assassinate Chu Xinran last time, Mao Kai had tried his best to stop him. Once the blood-robed pavilion was tainted with karma, it would probably lead to a disaster in an instant. However, Leng Shiqi was not very interested in this. Even in the blood-robed pavilion, not many people recognized him. As long as he disguised himself well, who would know that he was from the blood-robed pavilion? Therefore he said directly, "I know. Give me the information." "Mao Kai," he immediately said with a sad face, "Emissary, I've been talking for a long time, but you didn't listen to me at all. Don't worry, I'll hide my identity well. Besides, I'm the one who broke the rules. If the higher-ups blame me, I'll bear the responsibility alone. No, I broke the rules by giving you the information. I'll definitely be severely punished." Mao Kai shook his head. Leng Shiqi smiled gently and said, "Anyway, you've already broken the rules once last time. What are you afraid of?" Mao Kai hurriedly made a shushing gesture and said in a low voice, "Emissary, please keep your voice down. Last time, I didn't know Chu Xinran's true strength and identity. You have to know that he's a dark thunder guard. Even if I kneel in front of you, I won't give you the information." "Is that so?" Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows and said, "In fact, your information was not of any substantial use. It even almost cost me my life because of the wrong information. Also, you took 10 spirit stones from me. I haven't had the time to settle this with you yet." Leng Shiqi's tone became colder as he spoke. Mao Kai immediately shivered. This, I didn't know the truth back then. Humph, as long as you give me the information about Boyunho, I'll forget about what happened before. Mao Kai's face instantly drooped and his eyes were full of hesitation. Leng Shiqi saw his hesitation and knew there was a way. He continued, "Mao Kai, do you know that there are only 0 or infinite chances of breaking the rules? Anyway, you've already broken the rules once. What's the harm in breaking it again? Besides, only the heavens and earth know about this. As long as you and I don't say anything, the sect will definitely not know about this." Mao Kai heard this and felt that it made sense. He coughed dryly and glanced over from time to time. Leng Shiqi saw this and smiled inwardly. He knew that this matter was settled. He took out a spirit stone and placed it on the table. Mao Kai immediately ran into the room to get the information. "Emissary, I've brought all the information about Boyuan Ho, but I don't know if I should say something." Mao Kai took out a small stack of files and asked with a solemn expression. Leng Shiqi nodded and said, "Go ahead." Emissary, not long after Chu Xinran's death, there was news in Shangyang City that Buyuan Ho had secretly built a tomb nearby. This is too much of a coincidence. I also heard that a few days ago, the famous coroner master Zhuang Qingping entered the city lord mansion. I'm afraid there's something fishy about this. Leng Shiqi heard this and said seriously, "Don't worry, I've already thought about this matter. I'll be careful. By the way, you must have information about Qingkou Hall. Give it to me." Mao Kai. Chapter 156. Leng Shiqi carefully studied the information related to Boiwanhu's tomb. First of all, the historical record was similar to what he had read before. The only difference was the ending. In reality, Boiwanhu did not die in the hands of Dynasty. Instead, he escaped and disappeared. Later on, Dynasty's people raided the Marquis residence, but they did not find any wealth or weapons. According to the testimony of the people in the Marquis residence, Marquis Buin had once built a magnificent mausoleum for himself. There were treasures hidden in it, and he left a map for his descendants. Unfortunately, Boiwanhu's family had been killed and he had no descendants. No one knew where the map was. Leng Shiqi discovered a crucial point in the information. There was a map in the mansion that recorded the location of Boiwanhu's tomb. However, it was incomplete. The map was divided into 4 parts. The mansion had 1, the Qingkou clan and the Three Swords gang had 1 each. As for the last one, no one knew who had it. Thinking of the map, Leng Shiqi immediately took out a tattered map from his mustard seed bag. It was the one he had found on Chu Xinran. This should be the one in the mansion. No, that's not right. According to the information, there's still a map in the mansion. I'm afraid the map I have is Bao Pengyi's. At that moment, Leng Shiqi suddenly recalled that he only had time to take Bao Pengyi's head after killing him. He did not take anything from him. Presumably, Bao Pengyi had kept the map fragment with him. Later on, Bao Pengyi's body fell into Chu Xinran's hands. Naturally, he took everything. He did not expect the map to fall into Leng Shiqi's hands. It seems like the map in the mansion's hands was brought by Chu Xinran. Perhaps he came to Shangyang City for Boiwanhu's tomb. Since the Qingkou clan has a map too, it might be a breakthrough, Leng Shiqi said to himself softly. When night fell, he went to the Qingkou clan's headquarters. It had been more than 10 days since Leng Shiqi assassinated Bao Pengyi. These days, it could be said that Qingkou Hall was at its most prosperous. This was especially true for the hall master of Qingkou Hall, Go Huarong. At first, his Qingkou Hall and the Three Sabers Association could be said to be evenly matched. But not long ago, the Three Swords gang had actually boarded the Heavenly Cloud Tower ship and had even obtained the 4 spiritual guards. These were 4 spirit transformation stage spirit cultivators from proper spirit cultivation sects. His subordinates, who were born in the wilderness, could not be compared to him. Therefore, Go Huarong felt a strong sense of urgency. Coincidentally, it was at that time that the new city lord of Upper Sun City, Chu Xinran, secretly found him. Both sides' target was the strongest Three Blades Guild, so they immediately hit it off and secretly joined hands. After that, things went very smoothly. The Three Blades Society was destroyed, and Chu Xinran died inexplicably. Go Huarong seized the opportunity to take over 70% of the streets in Shangyang City. Countless people fought to join Qingkou Hall. The current Qingkou Hall had already become the well-deserved overlord of Shangyang City. Therefore, in the past few days, Go Huarong had been holding a banquet with countless guests. Even at night, it was still very lively. Leng Shiqi disguised himself as a hunchbacked old man and walked over. When he reached the door, he was stopped by 2 gang members. "Who is it? Do you have an invitation?" Leng Shiqi used a voice-changing technique to imitate a hoarse voice and said, "I want to see your hall master. Give this letter to him and he will see me." As he spoke, he took out a letter. The gatekeeper took it and said, "I will go and inform him." Not long after, the gatekeeper hurried back, followed by an elegant middle-aged man. The gatekeeper said in a low voice, It's this old man. The middle-aged man cupped his fists and said, Haha, I am the steward of Chinko Hall, Shui Wenli. Old mister, please come in. The hall master is waiting in the side hall. Leng Shichi followed him into the main hall. Along the way, they exchanged a few pleasantries. He only revealed that his surname was Lu, and he didn't say anything else. Leng Shichi followed Shui Wenli to the side hall. Sure enough, there was a man in green standing there. He looked to be in his 50s or 60s. This was the hall master of Chinko Hall, Go Huarong. As soon as Go Huarong saw Leng Shichi, he smiled and said, Brother Lu, please sit. Leng Shichi sat down unceremoniously and said bluntly, Hall Master Go must already know why I am here. So the last piece of the map is with Brother Lu. If you and I work together, it means that we have half of the map. Finding Bonhu's tomb is just around the corner. However, the map is too important. I still need to take a look at it to be at ease. I wonder if Brother Lu can borrow it to take a look? Leng Shichi sneered in his heart. Previously, he had put a rubbing of the map in the envelope. Therefore, he believed that as long as Go Huarong saw the envelope, he would definitely meet him. Then, he took out the old map from his sleeve. However, he didn't give it to Go Huarong. Instead, he showed it to him and put it away. Go Huarong's eyes lit up as he looked at the map. Although he only saw it a few times, he could clearly tell that it was real. This was because the map's material, color, age, and ink marks were exactly the same as his own map. He had studied this map for many years. It could be said that the map was so detailed that he could detect the slightest difference. After confirming the map, the smile on Go Huarong's face grew wider. Brother Lu didn't deceive me. Brother Lu, if you have any conditions, please state them. Leng Shichi pondered for a moment and said, I can give the map to Hall Master Go. First, I want 200 spirit stones and a third-stage spiritual skill. After finding Bonhu's tomb, I want to enter it with the Chinko Hall. I want to choose 3 items first. Hearing this, Go Huarong's face sank and he fell into deep thought. Leng Shichi was not in a hurry. He sat there leisurely and waited. He knew that Go Huarong would definitely agree. The reason was that Go Huarong had always thought that the city lord's mansion had 2 maps. If he wanted to be the first to find Bonhu's tomb, he would have to choose to cooperate with Leng Shichi. Furthermore, the conditions he proposed were not excessive. 200 spirit stones was not a small amount for an ordinary spirit cultivator, but it was nothing for the Chinko Hall that had been in Shangyang City for more than 20 years. Although a third-stage spiritual skill was precious, he did not insist on what type it was. This gave Go Huarong a lot of leeway. As for the last condition, it was an empty promise. Go Huarong would definitely agree. Sure enough, after a short while, Go Huarong said, We'll do as Brother Lu says. Leng Shichi smiled lightly and said, I believe that Hall Master Go's decision is wise and will not go back on his words. Go Huarong said proudly, Of course. Brother Lu, you can go out and ask around. I, Go Huarong, have established the Chinko Hall for nearly 20 years because of trust. Chapter 157. Over the next few days, a large number of outsiders poured into Shangyang City every day, filling the streets, inns, and taverns. The city, which had been in decline for a long time, became lively again. Most of these people came for Bonhu's tomb, while a small number came purely to watch the fun. Recently, news about Bonhu's tomb had spread all over the place, and it had become a hot topic among the residents. Today, a group of 10 people walked into the Spirit Cultivator commercial street. They were all wearing light blue robes embroidered with green clouds. Look, who are those people? I don't know, but I can tell they're disciples of a Spirit Cultivator sect. They're not people we can mess with. Go, stay away. Aren't they from Heavenly Cloud Tower? They're from Heavenly Cloud Tower. Look at the leader. He's one of the deacon elders of Heavenly Cloud Tower, Eugeniu. He's a spirit pulse expert of the 4 realms of Skyman. The surrounding people were slightly shocked. After all, 99% of the people in this group would never be able to enter the spirit pulse realm in their lives. Their eyes were filled with envy and awe. In the main hall of Chinko Hall, Go Huarong sat on a chair while Shui Wenli paced slowly. From time to time, someone would quietly come in, hand over an envelope, and leave. Go Huarong asked, "Have you found out about that person?" Shui Wenli was stunned after reading the contents of the letter. His face darkened, and he paused for a moment before saying, "Not yet, but my subordinates reported that people from Heavenly Cloud Tower just entered the city." Heavenly Cloud Tower. Go Huarong was shocked and couldn't sit still. Yes, many people saw them. The leader is the Deacon Elder of Heavenly Cloud Tower, Yu Jinyu, a Spirit Pulse Realm cultivator. Spirit Pulse Realm. These three words exploded in Go Huarong's mind. They didn't even have a Spirit Pulse Realm cultivator in Shangyang City. Now, one had suddenly appeared, and he was the Deacon Elder of a third-rate Spirit Cultivator sect. Needless to say, Yu Jinyu must be here for Bonhu's tomb. Go Huarong asked in a deep voice, "Just him?" There are 9 other elite disciples of Heavenly Cloud Tower. It's worth mentioning that Ji Gu, one of the 4 spiritual guards who was in charge of protecting Bao Pingyi, is also among them. 9. Hearing this, Go Huarong's face turned even uglier. He had already sent out all his gang members to search for clues in the vicinity of Shangyang City according to the map. He had also made some progress, so it could be said that he had a slight advantage. However, so what if he had the upper hand? Not to mention the others, just the 10 people from Heavenly Cloud Tower alone would be enough to turn his Chinko Hall upside down. Although he had a few spirit transformation realm leaders under him, how could those people who came from the wilderness be compared to the sect disciples who had been raised since childhood? What's more, Yu Jinyu was here. Who could be his opponent? At this time, Shui Wenli said, "Hall Master, should we contact Yu Jinyu?" "Sigh, it's too late. Since we were able to get the news, the City Lord's mansion must have known long ago. Although Chu Xen Ran is dead, City Guard Commander Zhong Lin is still alive. He is now in charge of all affairs in Shangyang City and will definitely contact Yu Jinyu as soon as possible." Go Huarong sighed slightly. But it was Chu Xen Ran who hired assassins to kill Bao Pingyi and the 4 spiritual guards. It's impossible for Heavenly Cloud Tower to cooperate with them. If you say so, then so be it. Do you have any evidence? Isn't that Ji Gu one of the 4 spiritual guards? He is the evidence. You underestimate Chu Xen Ran too much. Ji Gu must have secretly relied on the City Lord's mansion to survive until now. With him as the middleman, they will work together. What should we do? Shui Wenli was also a little anxious. Go Huarong had experienced great storms and waves, so he quickly calmed down and said, "Don't worry, since the tomb of Buyuan Ho can attract Heavenly Cloud Tower, it can naturally attract other spirit cultivator sections. Send more brothers to watch the various city gates at all times. Once you find a spirit cultivator sect entering the city, you must inform me as soon as possible. We also need to find strong reinforcements." Hall Master is wise. By the way, what should we do with that old man surnamed Lu? He's just an idiot. He actually handed over the map so easily. I originally planned to kill him directly. Let's keep him first. When we find the tomb of Buyuan Ho, we'll bring him in. He's at least a spirit transformation realm cultivator. When we get the tomb... Go Huarong's eyes were filled with killing intent as he spoke. Shui Wenli immediately complimented, "Hall Master is far-sighted. This subordinate admires you." However, the 2 of them would never have dreamed that Leng Shiqi was actually right below where they were talking. Furthermore, he had listened to every single word of their conversation without missing a single word. Before Leng Shiqi came to Chinko Hall, he had stored a lot of dry food and water in his mustard seed bag. After reaching an agreement with Go Huarong, he pretended to leave, but in fact, he sneaked back underground. He had 2 purposes. First, he could know all the information at any time. Second, he wanted to see what kind of face Go Huarong had. Today, he saw that he was not a good person. The reason Leng Shiqi had directly given the map to Chinko Hall was because it was useless to him. Chinko Hall had a lot of people. With 2 maps, it wouldn't take long for them to find the tomb of Buyuan Ho. He also hoped that the tomb would appear soon. It would be best if it appeared within half a month. That way, he could go back and take over the mission to assassinate Bao Pingyi. However, the appearance of Heavenly Cloud Pavilion also surprised him. Ho was indeed a very great person in the folklore, but in the end, he was just a marquis with no real power and lived in a small city. Such a person was really nothing to a spirit cultivation sect. For example, if the Heavenly Cloud Pavilion's master and head elder joined the Thunderfire dynasty, they could easily get the title of marquis. The appearance of Heavenly Cloud Pavilion worried Leng Shiqi the most. He was afraid that his identity would be exposed. When he assassinated Bao Pingyi, he used the identity of the old man surnamed Lu. His appearance was also the same. This definitely could not escape Jigu's eyes. Once he dared to show up with this identity, Jigu would definitely recognize him. At that time, he would not have the confidence to resist the encirclement of a Spirit Pulse Realm expert and 9 Spirit Transformation Realm cultivators. It seems that it is necessary to deal with this hidden danger, Jigu. Leng Shiqi coldly muttered to himself, then left Qingkou Hall. When night fell, Leng Shiqi touched the vicinity of the city lord's mansion. Then, the veins at the corner of his eyes bulged and he opened his eyes. In his vision, the world suddenly turned black and white. He carefully looked at everyone in the city lord's mansion, as well as their spirit aura. Not long after, he locked onto a familiar aura. It was one of the 4 spirit guards, Jigu. Chapter 158. However, Leng Shiqi didn't act rashly because there were more than a dozen Spirit Transformation Realm cultivators around Jigu, as well as one who was more than 10 times stronger than him. Leng Shiqi swallowed his saliva and thought, "That's Yu Jinyu, a true Spirit Pulse Realm expert." Not long after, those people dispersed, and Yashitsugu also entered a room alone. Leng Shiqi knew that his chance had come. Jigu had been living in an abyss of suffering during this period of time. At first, he failed to protect Bao Pingyi and failed the mission. At worst, he would just return to the sect to be punished. However, he didn't think that Chu Xinran would dare to kill them. When he fell into the hands of the city guards, he thought he was dead for sure, but in the end, he became a chess piece in Chu Xinran's hands. When he returned to the sect, he was still severely punished according to Chu Xinran's instructions, but this was nothing. Later, when he learned of Chu Xinran's death, he realized what despair was and what the pain of waiting for death was. If Chu Xinran died, who would give him the antidote? Recently, he would feel intense pain in his body every once in a while. Each time, it would get worse and worse. If it happened a few more times, he was afraid he would die from the pain. Just 2 days ago, Heavenly Cloud Pavilion learned about Marquis Buyuan's tomb and immediately sent people to Shangyang City. Because Jigu had stayed in Shangyang City before, he was familiar with the place, so he was brought along to make up for his mistake. Jigu naturally wanted to come to Shangyang City. Only here would he have a chance to find the antidote. Although the chances were slim, it was better than waiting for death. At this moment, he walked into the room arranged for him by the city lord mansion. He felt physically and mentally exhausted. The pressure of running for a long time and slowly approaching death almost made him collapse. Jigu whispered, "Sai, I don't know if I can find the antidote." Perhaps it was because he had been wandering on the edge of death, but at this moment, Jigu suddenly felt a strong killing intent lock onto him. He immediately turned around and was about to shout, but he didn't expect a dagger to be pressed against his throat. Yashitsugu was horrified. When did this person appear? However, he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. He could only look at the person behind him from the corner of his eyes. He felt that the person looked familiar, but he couldn't recall who it was. The person who made the move was naturally Leng Shiqi. Originally, Leng Shiqi wanted to kill Yashitsugu with his full power, but after hearing Yashitsugu's words, he changed his mind. Yoshia was looking for an antidote. What antidote was he looking for? Leng Shiqi recalled that Mao Kai had mentioned to him that Chu Xinran deliberately let one person go in order to frame him for killing Bao Pingyi and the 4 spiritual guards. With Chu Xinran's methods, how could he let Yoshiko go so easily? Lung Shichi quickly guessed that Chu Shinran most likely used poison to control Yoshia. Chu Shinran's belongings were all with the Lung Shichi. He rummaged through the mustard seed bag and found a bottle of poison called ant-devouring poison pill. After swallowing this poison, the whole body would be in severe pain every once in a while, as if countless ants were gnawing on it. And every time it happened, it would be more painful than the last. If the antidote wasn't taken within a month, the person would eventually die from the endless pain. Coincidentally, he also had the antidote. So Lung Shichi changed his mind about assassinating Yoshia. He whispered, "Yoshia, right? We're old acquaintances." As soon as Lung Shichi spoke, Yoshia immediately remembered who this person was. He was the assassin who killed Bao Pengyi. Although that person only said one sentence to Chu Shinran, Yoshia still remembered it clearly. However, he did not expect that one day he would also become the target of assassination. Thinking of this, he smiled dejectedly and said, "If you want to kill me, then kill me. In any case, I don't have many days left to live. Just give me a quick death." Lung Shichi took out a pill and said with a sigh, "Well, since you want to die, then this antidote will be wasted. What a pity." When Yoshia saw the pill, he seemed to have guessed what it was. His eyes suddenly lit up, and endless hope of survival rose in his heart. He hurriedly asked, "What antidote is this?" Seeing this, Lung Shichi smiled and said, "Naturally, it's the antidote to the ant-devouring poison pill in your body." Pooh. Yoshia's breathing instantly became heavier. He trembled and said, "Really? Hey, I won't lie to you. If you don't believe me, you can take one now," Lung Shichi said as he handed the pill to Yoshia's mouth. Yoshia hesitated for a moment, but immediately opened his mouth and swallowed it. Then he closed his eyes. After a few breaths, he suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were full of joy. He could clearly feel that the poison in his body was rapidly fading. The antidote was real. However, Yoshia knew very well that the other party would not give him the antidote for free, so he said, "What do you want? Just tell me." Lung Shichi took back his dagger and sat down on a chair next to him. He said, "No wonder Chu Shinran chose you. You're really a smart man. The ant-devouring poison pill is not so easy to detoxify. You must take 3 antidotes in a row within a month to completely detoxify the poison. The remaining 2 antidotes are in my hands." Yoshia's eyes flashed when he heard this. He had understood what Lung Shichi meant. The other party wanted to use the poison to control him, just like Chu Shinran did. At this point, Yoshia couldn't help but feel a little helpless, but in order to survive, he had to answer, "Yoshia understands. I'll do my best to fulfill your orders." Lung Shichi knew that it was done. He said in a serious voice, "You only need to do 3 things. First, don't expose my identity. Second, tell me the information about your heavenly cloud tower. Third, do one thing for me after entering Buyun Hoji's mausoleum. As for what it is, we'll talk about it later. As long as you agree to these 3 conditions, I can give you another antidote now. I'm much more sincere than Chu Shinran." Yoshia began to twitch when he heard this. He could fulfill the first condition of Lung Shichi, but the second condition was tantamount to leaking the intelligence of the sect. If he was caught, his cultivation would be abolished and he would be expelled from the sect, or he would be executed directly. And the third condition, if the other party asked him to attack his fellow sect members, what should he do? Lung Shichi seemed to see what Yoshia was worried about, so he said, "Don't worry, the information I want is only the basic information about your heavenly cloud tower. I can get it by asking around. It's just that my legs are not good enough, so I don't want to make a few more trips. As for the last condition, I will never let you do anything that will make the heavens angry." Lung Shichi's words finally dispelled Yoshia's worries. He nodded and said, "I promise you." Chapter 159. Lung Shichi quietly left the city lord's mansion without anyone noticing. Not only did he successfully solve the hidden danger of his identity being exposed, but he also took control of a spy in the Heavenly Cloud Pavilion. It could be said that this trip was not in vain. I really didn't expect that Chu Shinran's method would end up as a chess piece in my hands. It's very interesting. After solving the hidden danger here, Leng Shiqi continued to return to the underground of the Chinko Hall and waited for news. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, another 4 days had passed. In these 4 days, there were not as many people entering Shangyang City as before, but it caused waves of excitement because spirit cultivator sects kept appearing one after another. The third-rate sects, Hao Yi sect and Luo Yu Manor, both came. Moreover, the leaders were all Spirit Pulse realm experts, which caused a wave of commotion. In addition, there were a few demonic cultivators of unknown origins that appeared in Shangyang City. Demonic cultivators were a special kind of spirit cultivator. The cultivation methods they cultivated and the spirit techniques they used were mostly cruel and bloody. Moreover, most demonic cultivators had bad tempers, so they were not liked by many. On this day, Go Huarong was anxiously waiting for something in his room. He rarely showed such an anxious expression, so it was obvious that he was waiting for something or someone important. Not long after, Shui Wenli ran in with a head full of sweat, but his face was full of joy. "Hall Master, I found it. The entrance to Marquis Buyan's mausoleum is in the flat roof." "Ha!" Hearing this, Go Huarong laughed loudly and said, Good. This time, you've done a great job. In the future, when I'm old, I can rest assured that the Chinko Hall will be in your hands." Shui Wenli was immediately shocked and said, "I don't dare to take credit. Besides, Hall Master will break through to the Spirit Pulse realm in the future and prolong your life. Hall Master, you're still middle-aged." Okay, but don't make this matter public. Let the brothers of the Spirit Pulse realm and above leave the city in batches. Before anyone else finds out, we'll take action first. Go Huarong ordered. "Yes, but when do we inform Luo Yu Manor and the old man surnamed Lu?" Go Huarong thought for a moment and said, "There's no rush. Let's arrange for our people to go out and make preparations. We'll inform them the day after tomorrow." At this moment, a voice came from outside. "Hall Master, that Lu guy is here again. He's asking to see you." What? Go Huarong and Shui Wenli looked at each other in confusion. They had just discovered the location of the mausoleum, and that person had come knocking on their door. This was too much of a coincidence. However, they didn't suspect anything. After all, only the two of them knew about this in the city. Go Huarong replied, "Tell him to wait for me in the side hall." At this moment, Leng Shiqi was sitting in the side hall and slowly drinking tea. The best news for him in the past few days was that he had broken through to the 6th level of the spirit transformation realm. He was already at the peak of the 5th level of the spirit transformation realm when he was in the Dark Erosion Spring. Later, he focused on cultivating the 7 Fiend blood slaughter art, and his spirit force became even more refined. Originally, he could have broken through to the 6th level of the spirit transformation realm long ago. Unfortunately, he had been rushing to the Donglin County branch and carrying out missions for more than half a month. When he was preparing to return to the branch to cultivate in seclusion to break through, he inexplicably suffered an unexpected disaster, causing him to be seriously injured. In the past few days, his injuries had finally healed, and his cultivation had naturally broken through to the 6th level of the spirit transformation realm. It just so happened that he was about to enter Boiwanhu's tomb. It was naturally a good thing that his cultivation had broken through, and he was more confident. At this moment, he had nothing to do, so he opened the system and looked at his information. Name, Leng Shiqi, Lu Xingji, cultivation, 6th level of the spirit transformation realm cultivation method. Rank 3 cultivation method, Moonlight Cloud manual rank 3 cultivation method, Beast origin demonic technique, incomplete, rank 4 cultivation method, 7 Fiend blood slaughter art, incomplete, bloodline. Spirit skill. Rank 2 spirit skill, Forest front finger, complete, rank 2 spirit skill, Poison fire palm, complete, rank 3 spirit skill, Channel charging sword chi, complete, rank 3 spirit skill, Floating spirit steps, complete, rank 3 spirit skill, Devouring light flying dagger, complete, system coins, 41 When Leng Shiqi saw the last devouring light-flying dagger complete, he laughed in his heart. This spirit skill was actually one of the rewards for giving the map to Go Huarong. At that time, he asked for a rank 3 spirit skill, but he did not deliberately specify what type. Thus, Go Huarong thought himself clever and gave him a hidden weapon spirit skill that was even rarer than a movement spirit skill. This type of spirit skill was rare not because it was precious, but because it was very difficult to cultivate and was not very useful. Generally speaking, in the realm below the 4 levels of the Sky Realm, hidden weapons were indeed somewhat useful. Whether it was for sneak attacks or to buy time for oneself to escape, it was a good choice. Thus, many spirit cultivators from all walks of life would more or less carry some hidden weapons. However, as one's cultivation increased, the use of hidden weapons became less and less. For example, a Spirit Pulse Realm expert who had already opened the Spirit Sea could release Spirit Chi from their body and had a protective Spirit Chi. Ordinary hidden weapons would not be able to injure them at all, even if it was a hidden weapon spirit skill. Thus, almost no one was willing to cultivate this type of spirit skill. Go Huarong treated it as trash and threw it to Leng Shiqi. However, no matter how difficult it was to cultivate this spirit skill, it was not a problem for Leng Shiqi. Now, his devouring light-flying dagger, complete, was also at the realm of perfection. In addition, he had not been idle for the past 2 days. He took the time to go to the Spirit Cultivator Business Street and bought 3 flying daggers at a high price. Each of them was a rank 2 spirit artifact. This could be considered one of his trump cards. At this time, Leng Shiqi heard footsteps and stopped thinking. He picked up the teacup and continued to drink tea. "Brother Lu, does my tea taste good?" Go Huarong's voice sounded. Leng Shiqi put down the teacup and said politely, "Good tea, good tea." Go Huarong laughed heartily and said, "Ha, as long as it tastes good." "That's right, why did Brother Lu come here today?" Leng Shiqi said casually, "It's nothing. I just want to ask about the tomb." Go Huarong's eyes flashed and said, "Brother Lu can rest assured. With our 2 maps, I believe that you will find the tomb in a few days." To be honest, I still have some trivial matters to attend to. May I ask if Hall Master Go can give me a more precise time? It's not that I'm evading, but this kind of thing is hard to predict. It might take 10 days to half a month to find it, or it might be found tomorrow. Brother Lu, don't be anxious. Why don't you stay in the residence for a few days? If there is any news, you can inform Brother Lu at any time. Leng Shiqi thought about it and nodded his head in agreement. Go Huarong sneered in his heart and clapped his hands. "Come, arrange the best room for Brother Lu." Chapter 160. On the morning of the 3rd day, someone knocked on Leng Shiqi's door. Outside was a person dressed as a servant. When he saw Leng Shiqi come out, he bowed and said, "Senior Lu, the hall master invites you over. He said he has something to discuss." Leng Shiqi already knew what was going on and immediately followed him to the main hall of the Qingkou Hall. At this time, there were more than 20 people in the main hall. Almost all of them were spirit cultivators of the spirit transformation realm. They were divided into 3 groups and stood clearly separated. On one side were the original leaders of the Qingkou Hall. They stood behind Go Huarong. On the other side were a few spirit cultivators dressed strangely. Leng Shiqi guessed that they were rogue cultivators recruited by the Qingkou Hall. As for the last group, there were 11 people wearing red robes. Each of them had a white feather embroidered on their shoulders. They were from the 3rd-rate Luoyu Manor. Once the Luoyu Manor entered the city, Go Huarong invited them over. It was unknown what method he used to convince the Luoyu Manor to join forces with them. Leng Shiqi was the last person to arrive. Go Huarong saw him and said, "This is Brother Lu. I gathered everyone here today to tell you a great piece of news." "A great piece of news?" Hee, let me guess. What are you guessing for? Even if you think with your knees, you know that Buyuan Ho's tomb has been found. The rogue cultivators immediately shouted excitedly, causing the disciples of the Luoyu Manor to feel disgusted. Go Huarong stretched out his hand and gestured for them to quiet down. He continued, "Yes, we have found the location of Buyuan Ho's tomb. However, everyone here must not spread this news. After we are ready, we will immediately set off for the tomb." At this time, an elegant person sitting next to Go Huarong spoke. "Hall Master Go, isn't it too ostentatious for us to leave the city with such fanfare?" The person who spoke was the leader of the Luo Yu Manor, Luo Xiuwen of the spiritual pulse realm. His cultivation was at the top of the group, and he was also Go Huarong's thigh. Go Huarong immediately smiled and said, "That is indeed the case." Originally, this Go planned to let everyone disguise themselves and leave the city. But this Go thought about it. Wouldn't that damage the reputation of Luo Yu Manor? Forget it. Even if others find out, it doesn't matter. After all, we've already taken the initiative. Luo Xiuwen glanced at Go Huarong expressionlessly. At that moment, Go Huarong felt an invisible pressure pressing down on his heart like a mountain, making him a little breathless. Luo Xiuwen said calmly, "It's best if Hall Master Go doesn't use such petty tricks in the future." Inferior. Although his tone was very calm, it gave people the feeling that a volcano was about to erupt. Yes, I was muddle-headed. Go Huarong immediately nodded his head like a hammer and shouted, "Everyone, split up and leave the city." Not long after, Leng Shiqi followed the few individual cultivators out of the city. They did not disguise themselves because no one paid much attention to them. Nowadays, there were countless individual cultivators coming and going in Shangyang City every day. It was impossible for everyone to be on guard. After they left the city, they rushed in the direction that Go Huarong said. They were not stingy with their spiritual power and traveled day and night. They finally arrived at their destination at noon the next day, Flat Top Hill. It was a low hill. The top of the hill was bare, with only a few weeds growing in the cracks of the rocks. It looked very desolate. One of the people in the crowd said in a strange tone, "There's a tomb here? Or Master Ho's tomb? What a joke. Even commoners won't bury themselves in this barren land." "It's none of your business. Do you think you've become a master just because you've read 2 books on feng shui?" Another person immediately refuted. "What do you know? Enough, what are you arguing about? There's movement over there. Maybe it's the people from Chinko Hall. Let's go and take a look." Then Leng Shiqi and these people went around from the side and saw a large group of people busy with something. When they got close, Wen Shui greeted them politely. "Heroes, you must be tired from your journey. Please rest here for a while. The tomb is about to be opened. When the hall master and the others arrive, we can go in and explore." Leng Shiqi and the others nodded and went to the nearby tents to recover their spiritual power. Leng Shiqi found an empty corner and quietly opened his supercilious eyes to explore the interior of the tomb. However, something happened that shocked him. He could not see through the walls of the tomb. Leng Shiqi was shocked. His supercilious eyes had an extremely strong ability to see through things. At this time, he could only see through some sand and stones on the surface. Then, he was blocked by a thick wall. This tomb of Boiwanhu is really not simple. I'm afraid there's something like an isolation array inside. Leng Shiqi thought silently. In the end, he could only close his supercilious eyes and go back to recover his spiritual power. In the afternoon, people from Chinko Hall and Luo Yu Manor arrived one after another. As soon as Go Huarong arrived, Wen Shui immediately said something. Go Huarong's face showed some joy. Then he walked over and said loudly, "Everyone, the door of the tomb is about to open. We have the advantage. After entering the tomb, as long as we get the tomb, I will fulfill my promise." However, just as he finished speaking, there were sounds of footsteps behind him. Judging by the sound, there were many people. What's going on? Go Huarong and the others' faces changed. Everyone hurried forward and saw a group of guards wearing silver light armor rushing over in an orderly manner. Behind them were dozens of loose cultivators and more than half of them were people. At the front of the light armor guards, there were 10 spirit cultivators from Heavenly Cloud Tower. These people were from the City Lord Mansion. The leader was the commander of the city guards, Zhong Lin, who was the temporary city lord. He was burly, wearing silver armor and holding a huge sword. He was looking at Go Hwarong with a cold smile. Beside him was the deacon elder of Heavenly Cloud Tower, Yu Jinyu, who was staring straight at Luo Xuan. In his eyes, among so many people, only Luo Xuan was his opponent. Go Hwarong's face was gloomy as he shouted, "Zhong Lin! How did you know about this place?" Zhong Lin's deep voice sounded, "Of course, someone told me." As soon as he said that, Go Hwarong looked left and right. At this moment, 3 words appeared in his mind, "There's a traitor." He was furious. "Damn it, if I find out who leaked the news, I'll tear him into pieces." At this moment, there was a loud boom from the side. Wen Shui ran to Go Hwarong and shouted, "Hall Master, it's open. The cave entrance is open." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Zhong Lin, the city guards, and the people from Heavenly Cloud Tower. He was stunned. Chapter 161. In front of Boiwanhu's mausoleum, Chinko Hall and the city guards were confronting each other. Go Hwarong's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He knew that there must be a traitor on his side. Zhong Lin only came today, which meant that he had just learned the news. That excluded Chinko Hall and the people who came the day before yesterday. The several leaders around him had been with him all the time and had no chance to pass on the news. The people of Luoyu Manor were all arrogant and disdained to leak the news at all. Then, it could only be the rogue cultivators who left the city first. The traitor must be among them. Unfortunately, there was no time for him to find the traitor. Go Hwarong could only glare fiercely at the rogue cultivators. At this time, Zhong Lin spoke. "Hall Master Go, the news of Boiwanhu's mausoleum was spread by the city lord's mansion. Otherwise, even if you have the map in your hand, it would be a waste of paper. Since we're all here and the entrance is open, why don't we go in and explore together?" That sounds nice. We spent so much effort to find the mausoleum and you want to reap the benefits with just a few words? Isn't that ridiculous? Go Hwarong said unceremoniously. Zhong Lin shook his head and said, "Hall Master Go, if we continue to delay, I'm afraid we won't even have the chance to go in together." Go Hwarong frowned when he heard this. Immediately, he thought of something and his face changed slightly. Lung Shiqi rolled his eyes and also thought of the meaning of Zhong Lin's words. That was rogue cultivators. There were now a large number of rogue cultivators gathered in Shangyang City, and only a few of them were recruited by Chinko Hall and the city lord's mansion. There were hundreds and thousands of rogue cultivators in the city. Lung Shiqi and the others disguised themselves and went out of the city in batches, so they naturally did not attract the attention of the rogue cultivators. However, the city guards went out of the city with great fanfare. No matter how stupid the rogue cultivators were, they would know that Boiwanhu's mausoleum must be here. It would not be long before a large number of rogue cultivators arrived. Those rogue cultivators might be scrupulous about the people of Tianyun Tower and Luoyu Manor, and even give some face to the city guards, but they would never give face to Chinko Hall. Apart from that, there was another huge hidden danger, which was another third-rate sect, the Hao-Yi sect. The Hao-Yi sect didn't come into contact with any forces after entering Upper Yang City. They just stayed in the inn and were probably on their way here. In the end, Go Hwarong made a concession. However, he put forward the condition of letting the city guards enter first. At first glance, this approach seemed a little stupid. It was equivalent to giving away the initiative, but in fact, it was a good idea. That was because there were bound to be some traps in the mausoleum. There might even be formations and prohibitions. The first person to enter would be equivalent to stepping on a mine. Zhong Lin glanced at Yu Jinyu, who was beside him. Seeing his unapproachable look, he thought about it and agreed to Go Hwarong's condition. Soon after, the people of Chinko Hall opened up a small path. When the city guards arrived at the pitch-black entrance of the mausoleum, several dozen city guards with shields surrounded the others and stepped into the mausoleum step by step. After that, Go Hwarong and Luoyu Manor entered together. Lung Shiqi was at the back of the group. He followed everyone into the legendary mausoleum of Marquis Bonho without any sense of presence. As soon as he entered the mausoleum, Leng Shiqi felt a gust of cold wind. It was obviously a gentle breeze, but it made his body feel cold from the inside out. He looked up, but the mausoleum was pitch black and he couldn't see anything. Huff! At this time, torches lit up one after another in front of them. Go Huarong was obviously well prepared. With the help of the light from the torches, Leng Shiqi saw that they were in a passageway that was neither wide nor narrow. The walls on both sides of the passageway were bare. However, Leng Shiqi noticed that there were a lot of traces of heavy objects on the ground. However, these traces were not so clear over the years. Then Leng Shiqi pulled down the hood on his head, covering most of his face. Then his eyes turned blue and white as he activated Byakugan. Previously, he activated Byakugan outside the mausoleum, but it was blocked and he couldn't see the situation inside. Now that he was inside, Byakugan could see most of the layout of the mausoleum, but there were still some places that he couldn't see through. At this moment, in Leng Shiqi's vision, there were several traps not far in front of this passageway, but he didn't say anything. Sure enough, after a dozen breaths, there was a ding-ding-dang-dang sound mixed with a few screams. It was the city guards walking in front who accidentally triggered the trap. Hearing this, Go Huarong sneered with a hint of schadenfreude and asked everyone to stop. After there was no sound in front of them, everyone continued to move forward. It didn't take long for them to see the ground full of arrows and the bodies of several guards. Go Huarong said coldly, "Serves you right." At this time, Leng Shiqi, who was walking at the back, suddenly moved his body and leaned against the wall on the right. Because he was walking at the back and everyone's attention was attracted by the front, no one noticed his strange move. He did this because he had already used Byakugan to discover that there was actually a trap here. However, this trap was very sinister. It wasn't activated once it was triggered, but after it was triggered a second time. This way, they could guard against the second batch of people who entered and returned. There was a soft caw sound. Someone had triggered the trap. Suddenly, the wall above the passageway suddenly split into two sides, and then countless sharp spikes fell down. What was even more terrifying was that these spikes were shining with spiritual light. Everyone was startled. Go Huarong immediately shouted, "Not good." But the spikes didn't cover the entire passageway, and there was still some space on both sides. Everyone immediately hid on both sides of the passageway. Unfortunately, most of these people thought that the trap had been triggered by the city guards, so they weren't too vigilant. Even though they were warned, they were still half a step too late, and finally died after being pierced by countless spikes. Go Huarong and Luo Xiuwen's faces turned pale when they saw this scene. They didn't expect such a trap, and they were caught off guard. What was worse was that this trap actually killed about 30% of the people. Among them were 2 disciples of Luo Yuman'er. All of this happened too suddenly. Even Luo Xiuwen didn't have time to do anything. Otherwise, he would have had a chance to save the 2 disciples. Now, some people had died before the tomb was found, and they had lost even more people than the city guards. They were at a disadvantage all of a sudden. Leng Shiqi also pretended to be panicked. He was still inconspicuous in the crowd. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.